Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to be taking calls in a minute. The number, just as a reminder, is 720-619-2288. If you think the Bible is real, if you think Christianity is a good thing or productive, give us a call. Tell us why. Convince us. I'm willing to be convinced on any of this stuff, honestly. But I haven't yet heard a good argument for why, for example, Christianity is a good thing for society. Come tell me why. I have Justin with me. How are you doing?
You know, I couldn't be better, friend. Happy to be here. And like you, I'm willing to be convinced. In fact, I was once a believer, and data convinced me of this particular position. So I'm open to being convinced. In fact, I would say all I would need is a little bit of good evidence. I don't need a mountain of evidence to be convinced of a position if it's logical and it seems like there's no other conclusion that can be reached. So there's some fertile ground here, friends.
Absolutely. Call in and let us know what's going on. Let us know what you think. By the way, I don't think we've worked together before, have we? Or
not yet. This is our first go. I'm excited.
Awesome. Absolutely. Well, it's good to meet you. I'm Owen.
You as well, Justin.
So what do you got going on? Anything interesting going on lately? What have you been working on?
Well, I tell you what, I'm doing mostly the same thing that we're doing now. Lots of debates. I am working with Jimmy on possibly getting like a big debate with an apologist rather than just the people that call up on the show. That should be a lot of fun if we can hook somebody. I'm not sure who will be able to hook, but we'll get somebody on the hook, right?
Can probably hook you up with Matt Slick.
Is he still doing the precept nonsense?
Yep.
Oh no.
Yeah, if you want to message me for real, I think I could hook that up.
It would be interesting at least. He sounds like maybe an earlier clone of Otangelo. You probably talked to Otangelo.
No.
Okay.
Who is that?
He's another Darth Dawkins tag precept acolyte. Otangelo is doing the same script that Matt Slick is doing. He's just been doing it more recently.
Okay. And the presup, for those who don't know, that's basically where they presuppose the existence of God, right?
Yeah, that's the general idea. Is that we have these this thing. You can name anything you want to. You could say whatever transcendental math and say, well, this thing can only be accounted for because we know it comes from a mind, an eternal mind, and that mind must be outside of our minds. And so they posit this nonsense that there must be a God, a magic mind that accounts for these transcendentals. But all of these arguments rest on the idea that you believe these transcendentals already exist. And I haven't seen a good reason to believe in transcendentals yet.
Right. And they also like to kind of shoehorn in the idea that it's the Christian God and Jesus is part of the equation and walked on water and all that, right? Kind of ridiculous.
That's the funniest part is, so the arguments never actually end in the Christian God. They just end in some sort of metaphysical mind. But like, this could never be an argument for Christianity. I think the much more interesting argument is, hey, how do we tie this back to Christianity? Because it might be true that there is some sort of metaphysical mind out there, but like that doesn't mean Christianity is true. It's weird that if you believe a specific religion, you'd be arguing for a God that might not even be your God.
Yeah, absolutely. William Lane Craig likes to kind of shoehorn all that into his whole thing too. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, that's like they go from the Kalam conclusion to the Christian God is a huge leap. In fact, the conclusion of the Kalam is not even God yet.
Right? Don't tell him that. He's convinced he's got it. These people are absolutely absurd, honestly. I was actually going back and looking at that old. Do you remember the Ken Ham and Bill Nye debate from
Sure do, yeah.
God, 12 years ago or something now?
Mm-hmm.
That is entertaining as hell, honestly. Going back and watching it again, absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing, like he was asked point blank multiple times, "What would convince you that you're wrong?" And he just kept saying, "I cannot be convinced otherwise."
Right.
These people are absurd.
No evidence whatsoever could convince them, which means that their position, first of all, they'll do the same thing to us. So like, well, what would convince you atheists that God is real? We might list a couple things, or we might say, well, I don't really know, but we're at least willing to be convinced. But the Christian will say, no, nothing can convince me. Well, that just seems that you're not actually open to facts then.
Absolutely. I'm actually kind of convinced that half of these people know they're full of it and are just convinced that this is reality and that's just the bottom line, and will lie and cheat and manipulate and whatever it takes to convince other people of it.
Yeah, well, there are some that are definitely doing that, right? Like these big time televangelists, like they obviously don't believe that nonsense. They're just in it for to get in the goods.
Do you think William Lane Craig is one of those people who actually believes the things that he says? I mean, I think he's a Christian, obviously, but do you think that he knows that his arguments are flawed?
Maybe, and I'll give you a good reason why. So this is one of my favorite theology books. I got to use this one when I was in seminary. We had different ones in Bible college, but this author is really interesting because the thing that he does is he does give some philosophical arguments for certain positions, like he does one on the problem of evil and whatnot. But at the beginning of these chapters, he'll say, here's kind of the groundwork. This answer is the best we can do, even though I'll freely admit that it doesn't fully solve the problem. This is as close as we can get. And I suspect William Lane Craig, being as educated as he is, if you really pressed him about what's inside of his head, he might say, well, this is the best answer we have, even though it might not be perfectly adequate. Now, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this has just been my experience from talking to well-educated professors in this field, is some of them are literally fully convinced of God, but they might say, well, but this argument alone isn't enough. This argument is just one kind of piece of the puzzle that is imperfect in itself. So it's hard to say. My experience with these professors at seminary and Bible college and whatnot is a lot of them really do believe, based on maybe personal experience, answered prayer and things like that, even though they know the same problems that you and I are going to talk about, like with the Bible or with the metaphysics, they kind of know those problems too. But they're choosing to, not choosing, but they're still convinced that there's some kind of a God, and maybe they just can't fully grasp it. They can't fully understand it. So,
okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So one more time, I just want to let people know you guys can call in 720-619-2288. Tell us why you think the Bible is real. Tell us why you think Christianity is not a bad thing, or tell us why it's not bad to believe in Christianity. I want to hear your thoughts. So where do you fall on the mythicist question? I'm curious.
That's a good one. I'm actually going to have a really fun mythicist on my program in a couple of weeks, Christ Before Jesus. I'm actually not a mythicist, but I think it's a fun position because if you look at the claim, the claim is Jesus didn't exist. And when you try to prove that claim, it actually is somewhat difficult to prove. I think the difficulty is explaining why and how it developed. I think that's where part of the difficulty is. And then the other difficulty is like, well, listen, there's a lot of people. And one of my favorites to bring up is Gamliel. There's a lot of people from the Jewish movement that, like, hands down, like a Jew is to say, yeah, of course that person existed. But we don't have a ton of evidence for them. But like Gamliel is one of those individuals. Like, it's just a bygone conclusion that this guy, this famous rabbi, existed. But like, if we're really pressing for the evidence, we don't have any more evidence for him than we do for Jesus. So I just think if we're being fair, if we're saying, we can believe in somebody based on maybe just a small piece of evidence, small bits of evidence, I just think that we would be consistent and say, well, it seems like the evidence for Jesus is roughly similar to the evidence we have for other people, unless you want to take the position that they don't exist either.
Yeah, totally. I could see that. I think some of the reasons, like I said, on any position, I can be convinced either way. But I'm definitely not a mythicist right now. Certainly willing to hear people out on it. But I think one of the most convincing kind of parts of it for me are that there's the whole, like, why was Jesus from Nazareth but born in Bethlehem? There's this whole fake story about a census that never happened. They had to get this dude from this location to that location so that he could be born there, right?
Right.
And I don't know, like, why would they make it up? Why would they try to get this person's, why wouldn't they just make him from Bethlehem if he was completely made up, for example? I don't know. That's just the way I see it.
This is definitely one of those questions where you have to ask yourself, who's making up the stories? If somebody's fabricating the stories, did they not know what the other people were writing about? And if they were somehow aligned with each other, they knew about each other's writings, it seems like they would just write stuff that is inherently true. Like we wouldn't have contradictions in the text. Like, we wouldn't find that he was born in Bethlehem, but then his whole life was in Nazareth, and he was born during the reign of Herod the Great, but also born a second time 10 years later in during the census of Quirinius. If in fact someone was sitting down to write a cohesive story, or multiple people, and they didn't check with each other, maybe they were lazy, maybe they just weren't doing a good job. But nevertheless, I could be convinced of mythicism with the right information, or with the right argument, perhaps. I think what we know about Jesus versus what the historical Jesus was are light years away. I think what we read about Jesus in the Bible maybe barely scratches the surface of telling the truth about what the historical Jesus was up to.
Definitely. So you have, you said you went to seminary, right?
Yeah, I was stubborn. I was in the cult for 20 years. I went to Bible college and seminary, and for me, it was higher education that took me out of it. Once I really started to study the Bible, I just watched everything fall apart one by one. None of the claims of Christianity could hold up to science. It couldn't hold up to history. It couldn't even hold up. There's internal theological contradictions. Like, even Paul and Jesus don't agree on whether or not you should follow the law. Well, this is a kind of a major issue. If you're a believer and you want to know if you should follow the law of Moses, like the thing that God punished the Israelites for multiple times in the Hebrew Bible, well, you won't find an answer in the New Testament. You'll find a contradiction.
Yeah, it's one of the most confusing things to me that people go into seminary, or hell, I mean, even William Lane Craig, I think, currently says the Bible is inerrant, right? How could anybody possibly say such a thing? It's ridiculous. I mean, there are errors all through the thing, right?
It's true. And William Lane Craig will say something like a apparent contradiction. And when he comes up against contradiction that he doesn't have an answer to, he'll be like, well, there's an answer for it, even if I don't know what it is. Well, now that's just blind faith. If you don't know the answer to the contradiction, it seems like it's just a contradiction. And to be fair, you can be you can find contradictions in the Bible, believe they exist, and still be a Christian. Like, you don't need an inerrant Bible to be a Christian. It just happens to be the hill that he chose to die on. And to me, it's very clear. There's lots of contradictions in the Bible, and all you really have to do is just read the thing. I've been jotting down contradictions as I've been reading the Bible for a long time. I've got a list of almost 100 of them, and I use them in my debates. The believers really they have no way of resolving these contradictions. So, like, until I get resolutions to these contradictions, I mean, they're just going to continue to stand. But again, to me, like, the contradictions isn't like the death knell for Christianity. Like, it could be true that whoever wrote the stories were just making mistakes. But the reality is, when they say problematic things, like God says that you're going to follow the law of Moses forever. He says it in essentially a dozen different places. Deuteronomy 11:1 and 2, Deuteronomy 12:1 and 2, Deuteronomy 12:28. It says it Deuteronomy 5:29. He says it again Deuteronomy 29:29, Deuteronomy 36:8. All over the Hebrew Bible, he just says over and over, you got to follow this law literally forever. This is a perpetual statute for all time. And then you get the New Testament, and they're like, actually, Jesus did away with the law, and like all these prophecies about the Messiah bringing back Levitical sacrifices, that's not going to happen because Jesus was the final sacrifice. At some point, you're like, wait a minute. Like, this is not just like a contradiction of where did Josiah die? This is a major theological problem. Like, if the New Testament clearly paints a messianic like image, like here's what's going to happen when the Messiah comes, and the Old Testament paints a different picture, well, the New Testament and the Old Testament just have nothing to do with each other at that point. It's like saying, the Book of Mormon, like once you realize the Book of Mormon like contradicts the Bible, well, you might throw the Book of Mormon out. But that's what they should do with the New Testament too. Once you realize the New Testament contradicts the Old Testament, you're like, oh, well, we'll just throw that part out too. But yeah, they haven't done that because they're not reading it.
Absolutely. And actually, check this out. Can you still hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. This is, I don't know if you guys have seen this before. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, the source code for this, like the website went away, but I found the source code and I put it on my website. Basically, it's owenmorgan.com/bibviz, BIBVIZ. And these are like all of the Bible contradictions. There are some of these that are contestable. Maybe they're not really contradictions. Maybe it's just the way you interpret it is a little different or whatever. But it's really interesting. Does God help in times of need? How should we treat our enemies? Is it okay to kill? Things like that. Anyway, yeah, it's an interesting website. And I don't want to see it like die completely. So you guys can check it out there. All right. Well, it looks
thanks
like
for preserving that.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, it's preserved on GitHub, and I'm pointing to it. But I'm making it available to the audience anyway. But do you want to hit the first call here?
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Awesome. I'll bring them in. This is George, him from Canada, an atheist. Tell us what you got for us. I see mythicism is logically parallel to atheism.
Yeah,
I opened a can of worms.
When you started the show, you made a little mention of that mythicism position, and I look at it just a little bit different than you described it, and that is to say, mythicism is not the positive claim, but rather, in logical parallel to atheism, is to say that there's insufficient good evidence to be convinced that the historical person existed. In the same way that you might say there's insufficient evidence to convince you that a God exists. So those two positions, I think, are logically parallel. And, the burden of proof question, I think it falls down on the historicist rather than on the mythicist. So that's my offering.
Interesting. Yeah, I am not a scholar in this area, so I have to rely on scholars in the area. And I would say that it seems like the evidence for Jesus' existence is there just as strongly as anybody else from that time period, or pretty close to it anyway, to a degree that it's the vast majority opinion. Mythicism, or I'm sorry, what's the non-mythicist position is the majority opinion. And for that reason, I kind of side with scholars just because I'm not one myself, That's kind of how I view it. I see what you're saying. The burden of proof is on the non-mythicists to prove that he does exist, right? But I feel that they've met their burden, or more accurately, I think the scholars feel they've met the burden, even the non-religious ones, right?
Well, I think that's where the question lies. Can you yourself interpret the evidence, or do you need to go to an expert to interpret the evidence for you? I'm not an expert, but what I've been convinced of in terms of what I've looked at in terms of literature and information and people discussing the subject, the closer I look at it, the less convincing I find the historicist position. It seems to really strongly rely on assumptions that instead of actually offering the evidence, like what is actually the evidence? And say, there are a couple of mentions of Christians being active in certain books from the ancient world, but there's not the same kind of evidence you have for someone like Julius Caesar, where there's like coins and inscriptions and, you know, things that were created during his contemporary to his life that actually indicated that he was a real person. We don't have any of that stuff for the Jesus character, for example, or for Moses, right. Or, you know, you can number any number of different kind of people that are rumored to have existed.
I'm with you definitely on Moses. I think that's pretty definitive that he was not a real person. The Jesus thing, I think I've seen the evidence, but it's been a long time. But the evidence does exist. There is some. There's just not as much as Julius Caesar, obviously. But, you know, there are like a lot of, you know, accounts about this guy, and there are a lot of things that just don't add up if you're assuming that he wasn't real or that he didn't actually exist or that he was fabricated by somebody or whatever. I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a hard position on this, and I'm totally willing to be convinced otherwise. I mostly just go with the historicist position because that's what most scholars, that's how most scholars view it. That's what I'll say, you know?
Well, I can't say you're wrong, although I think I disagree with you. But that's just a matter of opinion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the call. Anything else you wanted to hit?
Well, thanks for being there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Awesome. We actually have another call that we can take here in a second. Just a reminder, number is 720-619-2288. 720-619-2288. Call us. Tell us why you disagree with us on any of this stuff. Make it a position that I have a strong opinion on. I don't have a strong opinion on the mythicist stuff. But call in and tell me why you are convinced of something. 720-619-2288. All right. Let's bring in the next caller. I think that it's active. We've got Jamie on the line, he, him, from England, a theist. The Trinity is logically coherent. What do you got for us, Jamie?
You walked out. Nigger, 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 nigger.
Okay. That was super funny.
Really made Jesus proud, huh?
Yeah. Anyway.
He'll be first in line when the rapture comes.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, you said you went to seminary. What did you learn about the rapture in seminary?
So my New Testament professor obviously believed, like most seminary professors, that the rapture isn't necessarily as biblical as people think. It gets built out from Thessalonians. So if you go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, there is going to be this moment where all the people are caught up and they're in the air with Jesus, and then they're going to live forever with Jesus. So this seems to be the root. And then the problem is you get like closer to the book of Revelation, and we've got this narrative where actually there's going to be some tribulation first. Like, well, wait a minute. When is the tribulation supposed to happen? And then when you go to 2 Thessalonians, now we've got this man of lawlessness that shows up. And like, wait a minute. Is there going to, like, what's happening right here? And so you have to kind of mix in this idea of like, wait a minute. There's going to be a tribulation first before Jesus comes back ultimately. But also, like, Jesus is going to come back with the sound of a trumpet and collect the people. Like, so what gives? What's the order of events here? And so if you read the New Testament minus Revelation, definitely get this idea that there's only, Jesus is just coming back. He's going to send out his angels. That's Matthew 24. He says he's going to send out his angels. He's going to collect all the people of the earth, and he's going to judge them, and that's it. We're done. End of the story. But the book of Revelation has a much different idea. They have this 1,000-year reign in there, and you have to figure out, okay, if there's a 1,000-year reign, when? Where is this fitting in? So if you just get rid of the book of Revelation, there really is no rapture. It's just a nonsensical book anyways. It's all prophecy for the first century that's failed. The beast in Revelation 16 Our Revelation 13 is Nero. That's what the 666 equals in Gematria. That's why the Latin manuscript says 616, which is, if you Latinize the name Nero, which is how we pronounce it in English. In Greek, it'd be Neron Kaiser. In Latin, it'd be Nero Kaiser. So the Latin manuscripts actually say 616 because they understood it to be about Nero. We even have another manuscript that says 606. Josephine Ford, a professor from Notre Dame, talks about this particular manuscript a little bit. But the general idea is this one, 606 in Gematria, comes out to Gaius Kaiser, which would be another nickname for the Caesars. So every way you slice it, all the early manuscripts seem to point towards Caesar, which means Revelation. If you're a Christian, just throw the book out. It doesn't do anything for you. It was a failed prophetic book. It barely made it into the canon. It disagrees with what Paul says. So if you're a Christian, I would go with 1 Thessalonians. When Jesus is ready, he's going to come back. He's just going to collect all the people. He's going to split them apart. He's going to judge them. The dead will rise from the dust of the earth, just like Daniel chapter 12 and Dunzo Compunzo. There's no 1,000 years reign, none of that stuff.
It's fascinating how Christian eschatology grew out of this one book so dramatically. Like, I'm sorry, I'm getting, like, I have to let my kid in. If you just give me 1 second, I'm going to unlock the door for my kid real fast, okay?
No, go ahead.
1 second, sorry.
I totally get it. The Christian eschatology is fun because it builds. Like, they start with a simple concept, and then they have to build onto it. Like, the concept is Jesus is coming back. And that's the earliest concept, right? We find that in Luke chapter 19, when he's talking about, he's given the parable of his return with the people who are supposed to invest the money, and then the wicked one doesn't invest it wisely. He buries it, and he's like, "Oh, you wicked servant, and take what he has and give it to this other guy." And he says at the end of the parable, because it's about when a king comes back, he's the king. He says, "Those who did not want me to be king over them, bring them before me and slaughter them." So in Jesus' parables, he's like, "Yeah, I'm coming back, and when I come back, I'm just going to kill all the unrighteous people, the ones that I don't like." And then we see more of the same. Matthew 24, Jesus talks about his coming. It just says he's going to come with a loud trumpet call, and then he's going to start dividing people right away. So the earliest mentions of Jesus' second coming is very simple. Hey, he's coming back. He's coming back within this generation, and he's going to judge everybody finally. But then he didn't come back, and people had to be like, wait a minute. What's happening now? That's why we have like 2 Peter. 2 Peter is like, hey, remember, a day to us is like 1,000 years to the Lord. Okay, well, so you got to be patient, but it's coming soon. And Paul says in 2 Thessalonians, that we're almost here. We're getting there, friends, but there's a restrainer right now. As soon as God stops restraining this individual, then we'll have the Antichrist and the end will come. That's why he says, we who are still left will be caught up in the air, because he envisioned himself still being left. But once that generation passes, people have to make up new theology because, right, well, that stuff failed.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating about eschatology, especially with Jehovah's Witnesses. They came up with a whole bunch of ridiculous eschatology for this. Of course, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and they have a running prophecy right now. Are you familiar with this? The audience may not be.
So my understanding was that the JWs initially had like 1844 picked as the second coming, and then they kept pushing it back and back every time it didn't happen.
Yeah, roughly. 1844 was the Millerite prophecy or whatever that fell flat, and like farms burned down, and people were just infuriated by that. And then from the Millerite religion came Charles Taze Russell, the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, in 1844 or 1874, I think. Anyway, so he kept laying down this theology, this end times date, and he kept pushing it back. I think it was like 1874, then 1878, and then 1899, and then 1913, 1914, 1919. Anyway, it just kept going and going, and eventually the second president took power in 1917, and he said, millions now living will never die, quote unquote, and said the end will be here within the lifetimes of anybody who was anointed, quote unquote, like baptized and like fully dedicated by 1914. And of course, here we are, 110 years later or something, and that never happened. So what did they do? They recently came up with the second generation teaching, which basically says anybody who was alive during the lifetimes of anybody who was alive during the events of 1914, like they went one level deeper. So they changed the word generation to mean contemporary, basically.
Right.
And it's only a matter of time before this one falls flat too. I don't even know why they're like latching on to this ridiculous prophecy, how the end is going to come in the next, any 5 minutes now. It's going to be interesting, certainly, to see how they react over the next 20 years, because that's the absolute max that extending it this far even gave them. They can't extend it any further than this. They've already made fools of themselves, so... Anyway, looks like we have another caller. If you're ready to take that one.
Wait for the theist to screen.
I'm sorry?
Oh, we got
Wait for the theist
coming?
to screen. We want to prioritize the theist.
Oh, okay,
nice.
Cool. Yeah, we can talk for another minute or two.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm wondering what seminary had to say about apocalyptic writings. Like, did they have any takes on the Book of Daniel or anything like that?
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
So the academic take on the apocalyptic writing is that all of them are for the immediate future. The general idea is like, hey, I know things are tough now, but if you just hold on, it's right around the corner. Of course, they have to couch it in some sort of divine aspect. 2 books I might suggest on this. I had them. Maybe I put them somewhere else. James Vanderkam wrote a really cool book on the beginning of apocalyptic literature, starting with the Book of Enoch. He was a professor emeritus at Notre Dame. I had another one from the Old Testament library that goes over the entire history of Jewish apocalyptical writing. I just don't know where I ended up moving to. But anyways, both of those books, if anyone's looking for data, are really good in understanding the function of apocalyptic literature. But Daniel was written in the 2nd century to address the Antiochian crisis, but they couch it as prior prophecy using this Daniel figure. But it's clearly not. Daniel doesn't know anything about Daniel's actual time period. He gets Nebuchadnezzar's lineage wrong. He misunderstands which king went mad. It was actually King Nabonidus, and King Nabonidus actually is the father of Belshazzar rather than Nebuchadnezzar. He wasn't related to Nebuchadnezzar whatsoever. It just doesn't know much about that time period. And it was also the section of Daniel with most of these prophecies, they're written in a form of Hebrew that wasn't really popularized until after the Antiochian crisis. So it seems incompatible with the idea that they wrote it prior to that, given that Mishnaic Hebrew seemed to have developed during the Hasmonean period, and that's what a lot of these chapters are written in Daniel. And you can tell where it was like where the last writing happened, because it makes future predictions that actually don't come true, like how Antiochus is actually going to die. He actually dies in a different manner than what is described in Daniel. So it gets some stuff right because he's writing in the 2nd century. Like Daniel chapter 9 is adequately describing the invasion by Antiochus. And it's word for word what you're going to find in the book of Maccabees. Just read 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and 2 and 2 Maccabees chapter 4 through 8. And everything in Daniel chapter 9 will be laid out in front of you. And this was the traditional interpretation since it was written. Even Josephus, if you read Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus details at the end of book 10 or 11 that this was fulfilled in Antiochus. So it's, I mean, from a standpoint of academia and from traditional Jewish standpoint, there's no need to make this about Jesus, and it doesn't fit either. The last week in verse 27 of Daniel 9 doesn't fit Jesus' timeline. It's off by like 100 years.
Right. So the story goes in 164. They were BCE. They were fighting a war against Antiochus in the area because Antiochus was like a king over the region of Jerusalem, right? And he wanted to, he made them do terrible things, like made them sacrifice pigs on the altar and things, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Just made them miserable. and there was a full-blown violent revolt against him. And the Maccabees, if memory serves, were the basically like the terrorist group that went around the violent, I don't know. There's a term for this. Freedom fighters, the freedom fighters.
Guerrilla warfare. Yeah, they were freedom fighters doing guerrilla warfare. Yeah.
Yes, and they took the temple back and everything. And yeah, that was the time when it was written, I believe. It's a fascinating kind of slice of history, a fascinating story. I actually wrote about this extensively in my book, Understanding Jehovah's Witnesses. I did not write about it in my book, Was Hitler an Atheist? That was a completely unrelated book. But anyway. All right, cool.
Maybe we get some free time tonight. We'll do a little jamming out on Daniel if we run out of guests.
Yes, totally. I went through every chapter of Daniel in my book and looked at all the scholarly analysis, and it's such a fascinating story. But anyway, yeah, we can hit the next caller if you're down. That would be William, he, him from Texas, a theist. There are things that are true in the Bible. What do you got for us, William?
Well, first of all, you guys are spot on in Daniel that it wasn't in 600 BC. It was what you guys said. But
164, BCE, I think.
Yeah, of course. But it does get historical David beginning, about 1000 BC. Wouldn't you agree with that David is historical, even though it's a smaller kingdom than what the Bible alleges?
I'm not sure, but I could be wrong here. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but I believe that we have one piece of evidence that David was a real person, and that's it. Just one
inscription on they call it the tell whatever. I don't know. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
The Tel Dan stele, but there is another possible inscription on the Mesha stele. So that was the 9th century one put up by King Mesha of Moab. But outside of those two, I'm trying to think. I thought there was one that was Egyptian. Let me rephrase that. I know there is at least one Egyptian inscription about King David. It's not coming to my mind. If you want, I can look it up real quick. I know there's one.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that I'm tentatively willing to accept that David was real for the sake of argument, at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. And of course, the Babylonian captivity, Hezekiah and that sort of thing is, those things, are pretty historical. What my question was, let's go to can we go to the New Testament?
Sure. Go wherever you want to go.
Okay. The challenge with New Testament scholarship is to parse out the historical from the legendary embellishment. Let me give an example. The Syrophoenician woman, remember that she goes to Jesus and says, "Hey, can you heal me?" And Jesus, being kind of a jackass, says, "Why should I give the children's pearls to the swine?" Well, that's a little xenophobic, a little misogynistic, which has a hint of verisimilitude. So I think that might have happened. What do you guys think?
Which book is that in again?
Oh God, I don't know. Mark, maybe.
It's in
Matthew, but go ahead.
It's for sure in Mark. And I thought it was in Matthew too. It should be Mark chapter 7.
Well,
and if it's in Matthew,
Mark,
it'd be Matthew 15 because that's the parallel.
Okay, so it's our most unvarnished gospel, the most bare bones gospel. Another reason that it might be a true historical event.
I have no problem accepting that it might be historical. I guess I'm just not a textual critic. I'm not sure if that section was like copied verbatim into Matthew or if that was like described separately. I know a lot of the book of John was kind of fictitious, largely. But I'm not actually sure about that specific one.
It's more of a theological statement, and it has real difficulties. For instance, the cleansing of the temple occurs in
chapter 2.
Beginning of Jesus' ministries, where in the synoptics it occurs at the end. So John has huge problems. In those long discourses, I am the vine, you are the branches, that go on forever. And, did they not get the memo in the synoptics that, you know,
right,
that Jesus was calling himself God? You know, was there a stone shortage in Jerusalem? So the other one example is the Spice Girls, Mary and Martha. Yeah, totally believable that Mary, I always get them confused. I think Mary was at the foot of Jesus listening to him, and Martha's the busybody, you know, and Jesus says she, you know, did the right thing. Well, that, to me, you know, it seems totally believable, you know? So
yeah, I have no problem believing some of those.
So, and the other thing, you know, what we try to do in scholarship is determine by criteria. One of the big ones is criteria of embarrassment, where Jesus is being baptized by John. Well, that makes no sense. Jesus, for forgiveness of sins, by the way. So Jesus should be baptizing John, not the other way around. And Matthew finds it so problematic that he goes and says, oh, no, you should be baptizing me, and corrects it in redacts Mark. So to me, that has a real, you know, chance of being historical. And actually, John Dominic Crossan said there's two things that are historically undeniable. That one, that Jesus was baptized by John, and that he was crucified. So, you know, that's the great John Dominic Crossan saying that, so that carries some weight. So when atheists or non-believers say, hey, there's nothing true in the New Testament, for example, well, you know, I think you can parse out something that, you know,
here, let me lay it out for you a bit. I don't know of anybody who says there's nothing true in there, but I can confidently say we don't actually know what is true. And we have no way of knowing which things are true. In fact, like I said earlier, a lot of the four gospels, there are large swaths that are copied verbatim, word for word, exactly from one gospel to the next, which is evidence that either they were using the same source or they used each other as a source or something, and it wasn't four independent eyewitnesses testifying to what they saw. The problem is that we don't know. That's the issue. Does that make sense?
Here's what we do know is that, you know, the prodigal son, the Lord's Prayer, these are found in Luke's special source, the L source. Matthew has his special source, the M source. So the Sermon on the Mount you will not find in Mark. So there are other sources that, you know, might be historical. Also, you have the Q source, which is hotly debated, but John Kloppenberg and many scholars, still the consensus is that you have a sayings gospel, an early attestation, that oral tradition that, you know, we can feel somewhat confident in, the Q source, which comes from the German word Quell source. So now you do have another problem is, like in John, you have Lazarus raising from the dead. The problem is it's not multiply attested, where there's things in the synoptics where you do have the same people. Now, obviously, Matthew and Luke did copy large parts from Mark, but they do have some of the same things about Jesus. And actually, you know, here's what my thing with Christians: they need to embrace the contradiction. For example, let me give an example. Like Judas hangs himself in Matthew, and in Acts, he falls off a cliff. So instead of trying to reconcile and say, well, he hung himself and the rope broke and he fell off, just be honest and say, look, there's contradictions. But that does seem to indicate that there was a Judas. And if you can get to a historical Judas, you could get to a historical Christ, maybe. Does that make sense?
Well,
yeah,
we're not mythicists.
That makes sense, but I don't think that it kind of stands up. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure it stands up to scrutiny. Do you believe in Christianity and in all of this stuff generally, or you on the fence? Or
no, of course not. No.
No. Okay.
No, I mean, Jesus is best understood as an apocalyptic prophet. And this is there ever since Albert Schweitzer's book, The Quest for Historical Jesus in 1905, that the consensus is he thought the world was ending his lifetime. And you have evidence in the Gospels where the Sons of Thunder are going, their mom saying, hey, who's going to be, you're going to put my sons on the right and left when the kingdom comes, right? And Jesus says, wait a minute, that's not my deal here. So there's good reason to believe he was an apocalyptic figure, but obviously the failed apocalyptic figure because it didn't work out. Jesus.
So are you a mythicist then, or you think he was real?
No, absolutely not. I've actually debated David Fitzgerald and spoke at seminaries and stuff about that. I am a true historicist. I think there's really good reasons to believe that you do have this very interesting and charismatic figure who lived in Judea, was crucified, who was baptized by John, who talked in parables. Although here's something problematic, though, is Paul doesn't mention the parables, doesn't mention his miracles, doesn't mention it. He doesn't seem to know anything about Jesus, and that's our earliest sources for Jesus. It's not the Synoptics. They're in 70 AD or whatever, and Paul's in the
Of course,
50s.
Jesus never.
Now,
I'm sorry. Of course, Paul never met Jesus. Of course, right? So,
yeah. But here's the go-to which me and a lot of other people go to, is Galatians 1:18, where it says, Paul says, I went and met Jesus' brother James and his closest disciple Peter. And there doesn't seem to be an agenda there. He's just saying it kind of matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, but here's another problem. There's just problems all over the place, and Christians need to embrace this, that there are problems. And there are evidences, but they're filled with problems. I'll give you a perfect example, 1 Corinthians 15:6, where Paul says, look, there's 500 people that witnessed the resurrected Jesus, some of whom are still alive today. Now, he doesn't seem to be making a big agenda or having an axe to grind, but we would like to have, testimony from these people. We'd like to know their addresses, their names, that we'd like to depose them, So it's an evidence, but it's a weak evidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is no trustworthy evidence that Jesus is real.
Well, no.
I'm sorry, that Jesus was the Son of God or whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another one, which is really
I feel like
fascinating.
Owen and I probably agree with you on these topics. So I guess I'm unsure where the call is going at this point.
Well, I just wanted to correct a lot of atheists that say there's nothing true in the Bible. And a great evidence is the end of Matthew, where the resurrected Jesus is standing before the disciples. And what does it say? Some doubt it. Well, if he's standing there right in front of them, and they're doubting, how in the world am I supposed to believe 2,000 years later? So, yeah, we do agree on a lot of things. But, again, I just wanted to point out to the atheists that you do have some historical core in these Gospels and in Paul.
Well,
and
I don't think we disagree with that, though.
There's a lot of legendary embellishment.
We're not sure who you're talking to, my friend. Owen and I probably both agree with you.
Yeah, I think that we're on the same page with that. Did you have any other questions for us you want to lay down? I'm sorry?
No, you guys have been great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
All right, cheers, buddy. Well, that was something.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, like I said, I think that all atheists acknowledge that there might be some truthful stuff in the Bible. We just don't know which things are truthful and which are embellished or flat out made up. So,
yeah, the hard part too is, for the next couple hundred years, people were writing like fanfic about the disciples and about Jesus. Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas, so on and so forth. And so, and some of them were pretty widely accepted. In fact, the proto-evangelism of James is one text where some Catholic doctrine actually comes out of it. So, it's interesting. And we know even in the Bible, there are unauthentic letters that are accepted as authentic by the Christian church. So, like, we know they were making stuff up. That's not a question. The question is, where does the stuff that's made up, where does that mesh with the stuff that might be actual? And that's the hard part. That's where, like, you're like using your best inferences to find out, but you don't know for sure, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Textual criticism. I'm really interested in kind of how textual criticism takes place, how people determine what's probably real and what isn't. But anyway, all right, we got another caller if you're down to take them.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. This is Joseph, he, they from South Dakota, an atheist. What does the Bible have to say about free will? What do you got for us, Joseph?
Well, hello, Owen. Hello, Justin. Nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, good to hear from you.
I had a question. One thing that I hear theists kind of harp on and on and on and about is how God values our free will. Like that's part of the reason why we can commit sin, why we can be atheist, blah blah blah, all these other things. Is that God values our free will. I asked about that at one point, and the closest that I ever got to God saying, like, I value your free will is that, like, we are made in his image. Where in the Bible does it actually say that God does value our free will?
Interesting.
It doesn't say it. What do you think, Morgan?
I was going to say, I don't actually know that it does say that. I think that's part of doctrine, right? Like, it came out of just doctrine.
So, yeah, the general idea is, in order for the gospel message or for God's punishments to make sense, you have to be able to make decisions, because it would be nonsensical to punish people if you weren't making your own decisions. The problem with that is, in the Bible, it just over and over again says repeatedly that God was the one who orchestrated all the events. Ephesians chapter 1, the elect are chosen to be the elect prior to the foundation of the earth. Same thing, Revelation chapter 7 repeats the claim. And there are dozens and dozens of passages where God basically admits that it's all been written for you. I like to think of Psalm 139 about David when he says, Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them had yet existed. Meaning the days were formed for him, prior to him existing, which I would say also echoes Isaiah 65, 9 through 10. I am God, there's no one like me, declaring the outcome from the beginning and from ancient times, things not yet done, saying, my purpose shall stand, and I will fulfill my intention. If God is making predictions and making them come true, it can only happen if, in fact, he's violating somebody's free will. Same thing with answered prayer. God can't answer a prayer without violating somebody's free will half of the time. Same thing with coming to Jesus. Jesus says that no one can come to me unless drawn by the Father who sent me. And then it also says elsewhere that God sends a powerful delusion to confuse people, and also says in 2 Corinthians 4:4 that Satan, the god of this world, who God put in charge, is blinding the eyes of the people to see the truth of the gospel. So God doesn't really say that you have free will. He does, however, over and over again, violate the free will, talk about, forcing people to do things. In 1 Samuel 10, verses 6 through 9, he changes King Saul's heart, and it says he became a different person. We find much of the same with the hardening of people's hearts. He hardens Pharaoh's heart. He hardens, in Joshua 11, he hardens the hearts of the Canaanites so that they will go out and fight. So this is, if God really values free will, he has a funny way of showing it.
So the just straight answer is there is no passage in the Bible where God says your free will matters to me in any sense of the phrase. It's just straight up like something that we made up afterward to justify the believing in the ability to commit sin.
I believe there are two.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at it. It's possible that if you get rid of some passages, you can get to free will. Like when God says, choose me and live. Think about the book of Amos. He says repeatedly to choose him. But you can't choose him without free will, right? The problem that you have is you've got other passages that contradict it. And that's part of the problem. It's not that you can't find passages that could suggest free will. It's just that there are other passages that clearly contradict having your free will. So I think that's kind of the problem, is that the Bible, like a lot of things, is contradictory on this particular matter. What were you going to say, Morgan?
I was going to say, in the earliest days of the Catholic Church, they kind of established themselves as the authorities on these subjects and just kind of started creating doctrine out of thin air a lot of the time. And they said that they were divinely inspired by God, and the culture is part of God's kingdom and expectations and things like that. Not necessarily just the written word, which is the Bible, but the commands and dictates and culture and beliefs of his institution on earth are also part of the Christian doctrine or whatever, which is fascinating because the Pharisees had the exact same belief about, their Jewish prophecies and things. They believed that the oral commands were supposed to be kept by them, and they would kind of carry it on, and they were the only legitimate source of God, of truth or whatever, and you couldn't get to God by just reading the holy texts and that alone. You had to be part of the oral tradition. So a lot of these beliefs and ideas, free will and other things, kind of emerged from Catholicism and then were carried on into Protestantism if Protestants found them useful for their purposes. And I think personal accountability was probably useful, societally, generally. That would be my guess.
All right. Fair.
But of course, free will doesn't really make any sense logically. As Justin said, God's violating free will every time he answers a prayer, basically. Right.
Right.
Do you have any other questions for us?
No, I mean, I guess that satisfies that. That basically just anytime some theist or Christian or whatever is coming at it with oh, you have free will, God absolutely gives you free will and all that. They're just taking that from no context in the Bible. They're taking it from fan fiction, basically.
I think that's the case. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, kind of wishful thinking.
Yeah. Okay. That pretty much satisfies my questions. I just wanted to ask that because it was going to lead into asking about the whole Exodus thing with God hardening Pharaoh's heart over and over again, which to me seems like a subversion of free will. But if there's no actual thing about free will in the Bible, it's not really contradictory then, is it?
I would say no. And something else on that note, in what was it, 1517 or something, when Martin Luther kind of came along and started the Reformation and started Protestantism or whatever, right? Well, just 20 years later, I think in 1537 or something, John Calvin came along and started the Reformed Church. And the whole basis for the Reformed Church or Calvinism was that it was predetermination, determinism, or predestination, where your life is laid out before you and you're just going to follow the path that you follow, and that's the end of it. There is no free will, exactly. For the record, free will is not a Christian concept originally. It came from, I just looked it up here, from Greek philosophy, I believe, Aristotle, the Stoics. So, yeah, I think they just I think Christianity took free will for granted, except for John Calvin, and it just kind of carried on from there. I don't believe that there's a biblical basis for it.
So that's 2 for 3 calls that I've had with Justin, where I'm basically finding out that Christianity just loves to borrow from everyone else. Fantastic.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
All
right. Anything else?
I guess I had a minor question, but it's not really important. I'd let you talk to other people, I guess.
Okay. Well, thanks for the call.
Thank you for your time.
All right.
Have a good night, you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, just for the record, again, as Justin said, there is no biblical basis really, but they've retroactively gone back and found verses that support it. Obviously, Deuteronomy 30:19, I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life. So the word choose there kind of implies some kind of a free will, but not really.
An illusion, maybe.
Yeah. Joshua 24:15, choose you this day whom ye will serve. Just minor verses like that. So it's kind of like how modern day Christians say that they're anti-abortion because the Bible is anti-abortion, when in reality the Bible is pro-abortion. Numbers 5:11-23, very clearly in favor of abortion. And they find one verse about a prophet, like, and God knowing his name before he was born, and they're like, abortion bad. Anyway. All right.
And God does it too. God punishes in Hosea 13:16. He says of Samaria, because they're going to get destroyed by the Assyrians as punishment. He says that their infants will be dashed to pieces and their pregnant women will be ripped open. So like God's like, okay, I'm going to punish you by literally ripping the children out of your insides and bashing them against stones. Oh, that's a God who really hates abortion, huh?
Yeah, totally. And Numbers 5:11-23 explicitly tells people how to get an abortion. It says you send your wife to the priest if she's cheated on you, and he will give her this concoction, this bitter water that she drinks, and it will abort the baby. I mean, it doesn't get clearer than that, right? So
abortion,
anyway,
buddy.
Yeah. I just don't understand how they can continue to claim that the anti-abortion position is a biblical position. It blows my mind. Anyway.
Well, and you know more than anyone, these people aren't reading the book. They don't know what's in it.
That's true. All right, let's bring in the next caller. We've got, I guess, do you have a preference or no?
I don't think so. And we got time for both of them.
Okay, cool. We'll bring in Carlos, him from Florida, a theist. God is about love. Christianity is about pain. It sounds like you're actually an atheist, or what are you? Tell me what your position is, Carlos.
Who's this? Owen?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, nice to meet you. Nice talking to you guys. And how are you guys?
Absolutely, doing well.
No, I'm a theist. Of course, I believe in God, but that's the problem in the world. You see how lost we are. You see how bad it is? It's because we think that Christianity or Islam is the right religion. You see, that has nothing to do with God. You see, and you still don't know God. When you will know God, then you will believe, and then you will be saved. That's all. Simple. You're good, so life will be good to you.
So Christianity is a problem, but God is good?
Yeah, because again, Christianity is a made-up religion. That's all. Do you think that God has to do with churches? Do you think that God needs money? Do you think that God is pain?
I think that a lot of people have deeply believed in God and lived their lives precisely in line with what he expects and still suffered terribly.
God is not a he. You need to learn that.
She, fine.
No.
A lot of people worshipped her. It. Okay.
No, it's an it.
All right.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. So how do you?
So, for example,
God doesn't bring prosperity.
No, but let me give you one of the examples why Christianity is wrong. You see, for example, the sign.
But we agree with you.
One of the signs of Christianity is the cross, right? So the cross is a sign of pain. For example, let's make like Jesus is coming back, right? And the first thing he sees is a cross on your neck. And then he will be saying like, What the heck are you doing with that thing?
Okay,
that was a big
you're
trauma
trolling.
for me.
This is a troll.
No, I'm not telling you. God has nothing to do with pain, and that has
that is nonsense.
That's what I'm explaining to you. I'm just trying to explain to you. For
Carlos,
example, the
how
road.
about you tell us about the God you do believe in? Because I'm interested to know about that God.
Of course, man. I'll teach you. If you're willing to learn,
so
I'll be willing to teach you.
First question is, how do you know that God exists?
Because it's easy. It's easy to understand. Once you know the truth, then everything you're going to understand. For example, why Netanyahu is killing so many children. Then you're going to understand why Trump is like his dog. Everything.
I don't understand. Why do you
happens.
believe in God? I'm lost.
I heard something about Trump being a dog. I missed what came before that.
What I said is that, when you understand the truth, you understand everything. For example,
sure, but we're asking you how you know that it's true.
Well, I can show you in different ways.
Okay, show me.
Different ways. Okay, for example, let me see. Let's see, for example, you want to be healthy and you don't ever want to have cancer, right?
Right.
Okay, then you have to follow the rules of God.
But people follow the rules of God all the time and get cancer.
You don't know them. Why? Okay, tell me what are the rules of God. Tell me if you know them.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you.
Let me see if you know them.
Claiming
tell me.
Hang up, please. All right, I'm going to mute you for just a second. I want to know, do you believe that there are no people on planet Earth who have followed God's rules precisely and also have gotten cancer? That's a crossover that has never happened in the history of ever. Is that what you're saying? You're unmuted.
Let me give you an example. Yes?
Wait. Hold on. No examples. Just answer the question. Do you believe there are Christians who have followed God's commands precisely, and there are none of those people that have ever gotten cancer?
I just told you that Christianity has nothing to do with God.
Okay. Are you going to answer the question? You
get me?
And stop playing semantic games.
I just told you. You're
not going to do
that.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You're not answering my question.
If you don't know the rules, you're going to have cancer.
So you're saying
you understand?
If you follow God's rules, you will not get cancer. Is that what you're saying?
Of course. There you go. Knowing is everything, brother. Knowing is knowledge.
So what are God's rules?
Power.
Tell me, list the rules I need to follow so I don't get cancer.
No. Wait. You told me that everybody's following the rules, right? You told me that you know the rules. So I want to ask you.
No, I didn't. I don't know what rules. I don't know what rules you have. Hold,
you just don't know.
Please clamp it for a split second and let me get this out. I don't know what rules you have in your head. If I were going to list the rules, I would say probably the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Be peaceful and kind and so on and so forth. I don't know. My mom had them on seashells on the wall when I was little. I would say you try to follow those if at all possible. Love your neighbor as yourself and love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, body, and strength. Those would be the rules. And maybe the fruits of the Holy Spirit would be emergent properties. I don't know what rules you have or what you think is required for this. That's what I'm saying. Okay, you're unmuted.
Okay. You guys are funny.
Thank you. I
that's
appreciate
why I'm teaching you. You know?
So.
That's not what I'm teaching you, but you remember you said that everybody's following the rules. And nobody's following the rules.
What are the rules?
Let's do
what are the rules? Tell me the rules. Don't give me examples. Just tell me the rules.
Okay. I'm going to tell you one that is one universal rule, and is you should not kill. You right?
That's Old Testament. Right? I thought Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament. We don't have to follow those.
No, wait. I just said that is a universal rule, I just told you that I have nothing to do with Christianity. Got me?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. So if you see what Trump just did in Iran, just killed more than 100 children in school. Okay, what is that? That's killing,
Evil.
right?
Yeah.
So do you have any idea what's going to happen to Donald Trump and the nation of the United States? Do you have any idea?
I think Trump is probably going to die a peaceful death at an old age, and then it's just going to be lights out and nothing.
Wait, does that mean that Trump is following God's rules?
No, of course
not. He doesn't have cancer.
Yeah, but is he done with the game?
So if you can ignore God's rules and still not get cancer or get sickness, it seems like this is kind of useless.
No, I just told you. If you follow the rules, there's no way you can get cancer. You're not paying attention.
Well, he doesn't have cancer.
What?
So
I haven't even given you the rules.
I mean, it would stand to reason.
I haven't even given you the rules.
We asked you for the rules.
I haven't even given you the rules.
Tell you what, I got a notepad open right now. I'm gonna get it ready right now. I got rule number 1. What is it?
Don't kill. That was rule number 1. Okay. Rule number 2. Go.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you rule number 1, because when I get found,
I already told us number 1.
We got rule number 1.
Oh, no.
Rule number 2.
No. I'm gonna tell you.
Are there
I'm
2
tell you
rule number 1s?
No, I'm gonna tell you one, so you think, because be prepared, because these.
We know what it means to not kill. What's rule number 2?
Wait. When you follow this rule, it's gonna save you.
Does killing a phone call
so pay
count
attention.
as killing? Because I'm thinking about killing this phone call.
Pay attention. Let me give it to you. You ready?
Yep.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Rule number 1.
Don't kill.
Do not eat land animals.
Well, that's got to be rule number 2 now.
No red meat. No cheese.
Wait,
no
so
cows,
you follow the old law?
No leather.
Wait,
you get me?
What? Where's he getting these laws from?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Is this from is this from Leviticus?
I think he's just making them up.
No. I just told you, man. I just told you that I don't have nothing to do with Christianity.
Wait, are you saying that God gave you these rules? That God told you what they are?
Divine revelation?
You said that. I never said that.
No, I'm asking you, where the fuck did the rules come from?
Hey, wait. Why are you saying the F word?
Rule number 3, Owen. Don't curse.
No, but why are you getting mad at me? No, wait.
I'm not
we're talking
mad.
nice and everything.
I want to know.
But I'm going to teach you something.
I am eating cheese right now, though, and cancer hasn't eaten my body up.
No, but that's not how it works. Let me teach you how it works. You have cheese in your teeth.
How much cheese do I have to eat for cancer to get me?
What? What was that?
Is it like a delayed reaction? How much cheese do I have to eat for like the cancer to kick in?
Can I explain to you so you can understand instead of making like childish jokes? So I can explain to you so you can say maybe probably say
questions about your worldview.
Okay, let me explain to you. Cheese belongs from a cow. Cows were not designed to end up in a slaughterhouse or to be abused for their milk. So let me teach you how it works. If the red meat or the cheese, it gets detected in your system, I'm going to show you the power of God. Be ready, because karma is coming. And I'm going to teach you in 4 different ways
waiting
how
for an answer to the
take care of you. But wait, I'm going to tell you, but let me get there.
Was?
Yeah, no.
This is 11 minutes in hell. The question that Owen and I need answered before we can move on is, how did you acquire the knowledge that you're trying to disseminate at this moment?
Because
how did it come
I am
to you?
A soldier of God. It's simple. I am
so
a
God
soldier
gave you this information? Then
did he speak
it? Doesn't matter how it is. You see, let me tell you something. You don't want to know the power of God? Don't believe me. Keep enjoying your cheese and see how your father ended. See how your mom and dad is doing health-wise. No, a troll. The truth is powerful, and the truth will set you
Are your
free.
grandparents alive, Carlos?
No, they're gone.
Oh, because they disobeyed God, or because they're humans?
Of course.
So are you going to live forever?
You know, when you don't follow the
Wait,
rules,
are you going to live forever?
My father, no, that's not how you work. You know,
So,
the key
I'm curious,
of
like,
life.
If you follow all of God's rules, how long do you live?
No, but what do you think? Wait. It's because you have a
If you
different
follow
way of
all of
thinking how life
God's
is working.
rules, how long
No, but
do you
wait.
get to live?
What do you think the purpose of life? No,
I'm
wait.
still
You think
just
the purpose
asking
of
you
life
to answer the
to
question, because
live
this is a
forever?
very easy
Yeah,
logistical
but-
question about the God concept that you're bringing up. You're saying you won't get sick if you follow all of God's rules, which means you would potentially live for how long?
Until with your body is supposed how it's supposed to be designed. You see, your body is supposed to be to last
I'm waiting
like,
for a duration.
100 years.
100 years.
100 years, right? Yeah,
Oh,
that's
not
not how
hard.
you're supposed to last. 100 years. But the way they're supposed to be the game is that you're supposed to end the game with dignity, with God, in a normal age, in a normal place, like your bed, happy with a smile on your bed,
Yeah.
knowing that you're going with God instead
you
of
have-
going in a
You have
hospital,
pillow talk with God?
surrounded by your
How deep is
surrounded
his
by
voice?
your
Is it
relatives
soothing?
because your father had a
I find
stroke
it's
or
difficult
he's
sometimes
dealing with
to fall
diabetes.
asleep at night. I think God's deep, soothing voice would be really helpful here. Or does God speak to you audibly?
No, please don't try to mix things.
How
Don't
does
try
he
to
speak to you?
sabotage
What's
this
the
conversation.
mechanism
No,
for information
but
exchange?
please, no. I'm going to tell you something. Don't try to sabotage the conversation. We're grown ups. Come on, man.
Well,
This is
Carlos.
something
Two of us
good. There's a reason. There's a
Carlos,
reason why we're
listen,
here.
let me just kind of outline why this is happening. It's because you're telling us
Okay.
I'm convinced you're a troll, but people in the comments say that you're legitimate and genuine, so I don't know. But you're
It
telling
doesn't
us
matter
that
if
you
you believe me or
speak-
not.
You're telling
doesn't
us
matter.
you're telling us you speak to God, or that God is giving you information, and then you get upset when we ask you questions
I'm upset.
about it.
I'm not upset, brother. Brother, I'm not the
yelling.
one saying the F
You're
word.
shouting now.
I'm not the one saying, "Oh no," I'm just excited because I know what's coming, brother. I'm not upset at all. I have control.
Okay.
Doesn't sound that way.
No.
Oh, I would show you. You know,
You'd show me
instead
your
of
control.
visiting the doctors, I enjoy life. You see, instead of taking medicine, I go and
You're
do
enjoying
work,
something.
and I enjoy this beautiful life.
Things
Yes,
are starting
man.
to make a lot more
Yes.
sense.
Yes,
I am
and at
starting to
least I
see
gave
this.
you one of the rules. Whenever
you
you
should
call
see a
me,
doctor.
everybody gonna know the rest of the rules. But be ready, start getting clean because before it's too late. Remember, no more cheese. You want cheese? Get dairy-free cheese. If you
Okay.
want a burger, get I don't know,
This guy's
beyond a
been listening
burger.
too much vegan
And
teacher.
remember,
All right. Listen, we're going
what's
to move
the
on,
symbol
Carlos.
of Jesus?
Okay, we're going to move on. I appreciate the call. It was an interesting one, and I hope to get
Bro,
all
God
of the
bless you.
whole list of rules one day.
This
God
is what
bless
happens
you.
when you don't consume cheese.
All right, have a good one, okay?
Keep enjoying cheese. You will remember this conversation.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
It's literally unforgettable.
Okay. Wow, that was a wild one. People say he's legit. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that.
I don't know what's worse, if he's a troll or legit. Well, if he's legit, it's very concerning that this is a real person.
I know that a lot of people genuinely believe that they really do hear voices from God, and they convince themselves that they're real. So it wouldn't be a big leap to think that he really is real, and it's not mental illness. It's actually just something that looks identical to mental illness, you know. Indistinguishable, but not actually caused by a chemical imbalance. Anyway.
Right.
Okay, we can take the next caller if you're ready. We will hit Adriano, he, him, from Puerto Rico, agnostic. What do you got for us?
You walked out. Nigger, 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 nigger.
Okay. Yeah, very funny. All right, let me bring in the next caller, Glenn from Virginia, theist. If you're not a Christian, how do you justify the laws of logic? What do you got for us, Glenn?
Yeah. So that, I guess you just kind of articulated the question I kind of had for you guys. So how do you justify the laws of logic if you're not a Christian?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I say laws of logic, I'm just referring to the language that we are using to describe the way the universe behaves. I don't think the laws of logic like actually exist transcendentally. It just happens to be an accurate description of how we are perceiving the universe. That's it.
Yeah, I definitely would disagree with that. So just
what's the evidence that they exist transcendentally?
Well, I think first we kind of have to identify what they are. And I'm speaking from a fundamental level, the laws of logic, the three fundamental laws of logic, the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of excluded middle. So the question is, so those laws are statements, right? So if we can agree that they're statements, my question is, if you're a non-Christian, how do you justify them?
Well, it's not really hard. They're just descriptions. They're not prescriptions. Nothing in the universe is obeying the laws of logic. It's just describing how the universe happens to behave. If something is, it is. It can't be is and not is at the same time. It's very, very easy to understand.
I don't think you understand the question. How do you? I mean, they're
sure I do.
I mean,
the statements are true because they have evaluative properties. Like we can look at the statement and see if it's true. We can evaluate reality.
No, I think what you're describing is how they behave. And I guess what I'm asking you is how do you, right, sure. But how do you justify the statements about how the universe behaves? Because that's what the laws of logic are. Those are statements.
You test them.
And so right, okay. So, but the statements themselves, how do you account for the statements?
The statements are just our language for describing the function of being. That's it.
I get it, but the question is, if these statements, so the statements existed before they were discovered by man. Would you agree with that?
No.
So then you're saying that the statements were created by man.
Statements are always created by a statement maker, which is human beings.
What's your basis for that?
Find me a statement that was uttered by something that wasn't human.
Well,
I mean,
no.
Statements, definitionally speaking, are words uttered by something that can speak. Like a human being with rational capabilities has the ability to make statements. Statements are just propositions that can be evaluated. That's all.
Right, but the propositions and the statements existed before human beings.
Except they didn't.
Stumbled upon them. Yeah, but
they did not.
Well, wait a minute. So you're saying then you are saying that they're created by a man.
I'm saying that propositions are always going to be mind dependent. They're human dependent.
Yes. Then, well, I agree.
Propositions come from minds.
I would agree. Now there we actually have some agreement. And my point to you is that
human minds
only of a mind, because the laws of logic are of a mind. So those are their processes
of a human mind. Yeah, humans developed them.
Well, that's an opinion, but there's no basis to make that statement.
No,
these are
it's not an opinion. It's true. In fact, we can go back in history and we can tell you who first came up with them.
But the question is, how was that reached by human mind? In other words, these processes themselves are of a mind.
Aristotle,
and to the extent that
Aristotle formulated the three laws of logic, and he did them through observation.
Well, he articulated them, but they existed before he articulated them. Would you agree with that?
That's an adorable claim, but it's not true.
Was Aristotle before Aristotle stumbled upon these processes? Was he not Aristotle?
That's a different question altogether. Was Aristotle a thing? Yes. Was Aristotle's propositions true or false prior to him discovering the laws of logic? Yes. Being able to formalize something doesn't mean that the ability to describe it didn't exist. So you could have described it in different ways. You could have said, this case, this headphone case exists. I know it exists. It can't exist and not exist in the same moment. Now, I can say those without knowing anything about the laws of logic because it's just true. Either this case can exist and not exist at the same time, or it can't. If it can't, that just means that the one of the laws of logic would be validated. Whether or not I've ever heard of the laws of logic is completely irrelevant.
Sure. But the exercise used to come to those conclusions are processes of a mind.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
all conclusions are done in minds.
Right. So the fact of the matter is those processes were in place before they were outlined in descriptive terms.
That's what you can't demonstrate yet. Those are claims that you're making with no support.
Oh, here's the support. The laws of logic are statements themselves. They are statements. The laws themselves that govern the universe and how things exist, they are statements. Those statements were in place before any object that is subject to those statements exists.
Except they weren't.
My
because
point
statements, by definition, are uttered by people with vocal cords that can utter. So no, those statements didn't exist prior to humans.
No, they're of a mind. No,
I mean, I can give you the definition of statement. Maybe the definition of statements tripping you up. You want me to give you the formal definition?
Sure, you can.
Yeah, a statement is a definite and clear expression of something in speech or writing. Things that do speech are human beings. Things that do writings are human beings.
Well, they don't have to be human beings because part of the problem is that these statements...
They can be dogs.
Only two... Oh, yeah. So the best way to approach this is, the question is, the statements themselves, were those statements true before they were, I guess,
you're asking the wrong question. There are no true statements if the statements don't exist.
Say it again.
There are no true statements if the statement doesn't exist.
You and I agree with that. And so now you're actually sort of playing on my turf, because at the end of the day, how do you justify that without being a Christian? How do you justify that?
Justify what?
Here's the bottom line.
You can't evaluate statements if they don't exist. The truth value of a statement is just comparing the proposition to reality. Once you have a statement, then you can compare it to reality and you can decide what the truth value is. But truth itself doesn't already exist. Evaluations don't already exist. Statements don't already exist. Those are all things that come from human minds.
No. So this truth. Let me ask you this: is truth? Are the laws of logic true?
The laws of logic are evaluative, and we call them true. They're also not true in every occasion. For example, the law of excluded middle doesn't always hold true in fuzzy logic. So they're mostly true
statements. Not mostly. They're true statements. Can you not?
Mostly true. If the fuzzy logic is a real thing, then it is indeed not always true, the law of excluded middle.
Are the fundamental laws of logic true?
Sometimes.
Okay. Well, I think that's part of the problem. And so that's the worldview that you would have to adopt. I just don't. I mean,
it's not a worldview that I have to adopt. It just happens to be the case until you can demonstrate that the laws of logic exist transcendentally. Then all you're doing is just begging the question here. So, like, again, I know you want them to be transcendental, but you can't just say that they are. What's the evidence that the laws of logic are prescriptive rather than descriptive?
Well, that's not my claim. My claim is that these are eternal truths and that they're a process of a mind. They're not a product.
You can't have eternal truths.
Process of a mind.
Eternal truths require an evaluation. Evaluators didn't always exist.
No. There's no basis for that claim. My point is
humans always existed.
The process.
Oh, damn! Well, I'm learning something today.
No, the processes themselves, known as the laws of logic, they're processes of a mind. they're true, they're eternal. And my point is that they're not.
You keep saying it, but we're asking for you to demonstrate it. Give us an argument that would conclude, or a piece of evidence that would entail that these laws of logic are transcendental.
Sure. Okay. All right. So the laws of logic, to account for them, they're either produced or they're not produced.
Already covered it. Produced.
So you're saying that that they were created. The laws of logic were created.
I've said it probably 3 times now.
So you're saying the laws of logic were created by Aristotle? Is that your claim? Is that
the 3 formal laws of logic were first uttered, written down by Aristotle, and they're descriptive of the way things behave. They're not prescriptive. Nothing in the universe is like trying to not violate these 3 laws. It also happens to be that they don't all 3 hold true in every situation that we know of. For example, in fuzzy logic, it's true that the law of excluded middle doesn't always hold up. That's why it's fuzzy logic.
Right. So the laws of logic were not true before Aristotle articulated them. Is that your claim?
The laws of logic didn't exist. You can't assign truth values to things that don't exist.
So this is insane. The laws of logic were created by Aristotle. You're going to stand by that? He created them?
Yes, the formalized 3 laws of logic were first formalized by Aristotle. Obviously, the claims, that the propositions that are in these 3 laws of logic, people already knew about. If you asked an ancient human being 4,000 years ago if they can exist and not exist at the same time, they're going to say, obviously, that's not possible. That's part of this idea of the law of logic. Whether or not that's been formalized into a statement is irrelevant. The idea of being, like something can be A and not B, but not also not A, is just something that we know intuitively. If something is A, it can't be not A. It can be another thing that has a similar identity, but it can't be the thing that negates it. It's just simple describing the world. Something is a thing, which means it can't be not a thing. You don't need the laws of logic to know this. It's just intuitive. It's describing being.
Right. These are my point is that these are true. These were true independent of Aristotle. Aristotle was Aristotle before he identified or described or outlined any laws of logic. He was what he was. He is who he.
The universe behaved the way that the universe behaved prior to Aristotle. I agree, but the laws of logic didn't exist prior to that. We're talking about behaviors, not laws. So laws that came from Aristotle didn't exist prior to Aristotle. Different formulations of those laws might have existed, but the classical 3 laws didn't exist prior to then. We're talking about behavior. These laws are just describing the behavior.
Agreed, but I think you're getting hung up on the law. What I'm getting at is the phenomenon themselves that were described by Aristotle.
Well, you didn't say the phenomenons. You said the laws.
Well, we're using the term laws to identify, just to have some kind of baseline for the discussion. So even if we don't want to use the term law, well, okay, that's fine. I mean, we have to have some way to communicate with one another. And my point is that
I don't think that you think that the laws of logic are transcendental anyways, because you think your God can violate them. So this is kind of a nonsense, like all the way around.
Well, no, my whole point is that these are I just don't see how you justify them outside of the Christian worldview. It just doesn't.
They don't need justified. They're observations. Observations just need evaluated. They're either true observations or false observations. They don't actually need justification.
Well, wait a minute. But if a person's worldview is that they're not true outside of a human mind, then
what's not true?
That they are true outside of it. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The laws of logic are true outside of the human mind, because we've just agreed that.
I didn't say that.
We're not.
I think you got lost in the sauce.
Yeah, right. But no, the point is that if we're not going to just identify the laws of logic and reduce them just to the term the laws of logic, okay, let's use the term phenomenon or the reactions of things in the universe. Okay. The bottom line is,
does the universe behave in a way?
Yes. Of course. Of course.
Great. That's all the laws of logic are describing. They're just describing how being works. Being, it just happens to be something that things have. Things have being or they don't have being. That's really what we're talking about with the laws of logic. It either is or it isn't. It can't be is and isn't at the same time. That would be a contradiction, and contradictions don't exist. Which is one reason why I don't believe in the Trinity, because the Trinity violates the laws of logic as well. So,
well, wait a minute. What's your basis for that?
The law of identity is violated. You can't be identical to something and also be distinct from it. If Jesus is God, he has to have 100% of the indispensable characteristics of God, and he doesn't. He lacks omniscience, he lacks omnipotence, and he also lacks omnipresence.
Well, so I can tell you have a misunderstanding. You have a misunderstanding of the Trinity, and so first of all, if you don't believe in the Bible, then we can't necessarily discuss.
I'm sure I've got the misunderstanding. Give me the correct understanding.
One God.
I'm sorry. Did you just say if you don't believe in the Bible or in the things in the Bible, then you can't discuss it? Is that what you just said?
No. No. My point is that if you don't believe in Scripture, why would I discuss the truth of Scripture? If you don't believe it.
Because words are evaluative, and so are propositions. I can evaluate propositions whether I believe in the Bible or not. You can evaluate propositions in another holy book. Like if the Quran says something, are you capable of evaluating the proposition?
Well, I can well, that's the thing. Because of a Christian,
I was waiting for a yes or no. If there's a proposition in the Quran, can you evaluate that as either true or false?
Yeah, no one said you can't. No one said you can't evaluate the proposition.
Cool.
You just did.
Right. Right.
So let's evaluate the proposition that Jesus is God. He's fully God, 100% God, but also distinct from God. How about we do that?
100% God and 100% distinct from God? I don't agree with that. 100%.
I didn't say 100% distinct. Is Jesus 100% God? Because that is Trinitarian doctrine.
Of course. Of course.
Right, because God can't have parts, right?
God can't have parts?
Divine simplicity, yes. God doesn't have parts. It's called partialism if you believe God has parts, and that was a heresy that they condemned way back in Theodosius' time.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. God can't have parts. Wait, God can't have parts. What do you mean? I mean, what are you saying by that? I just want to make sure that we're discussing the same thing. I never claimed to be a historian. I don't know of all the history of every belief that's ever been had.
Because if God has parts, it means that the individual parts aren't 100% God. If Jesus is a part of God and the Holy Spirit is a part of God, that means Jesus is only 1/3 God.
Oh no,
that's why partialism is a heresy.
God. Jesus is fully God.
He's 100% God, isn't he?
God and the Father.
Okay, so is Jesus 100% God?
I'm not going to. The reason why I won't use adopt the term 100% God because I don't see that in Scripture. It doesn't say he was fully God.
He's a demigod?
He's fully.
If fully means 100%. Like if you're full, it means there's no room left. That's 100%. He's either fully God, 100%, or he's like 90%. What is he?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm going to use fully God. But again, how do you justify? Let's get back to the laws of logic. How do you justify
the Colossians?
These statements?
Well, we're already. I know this is terrifying for you because I'm demonstrating that the Trinity violates one of the laws of logic. But the Colossians 1:15 and elsewhere says that the fullness of God was in Jesus, and that he's the exact image of the Father. In fact, he says himself that if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So this could only be true if Jesus was 100% God, right?
Well, see, I'm not going to use this for 100% because that's not what the Bible says. That's why I said fully.
Well, if Jesus is, fully means 100%. Do you want me to give you that definition too?
I'm going to stick with the Scripture. It says fully, so I'm more comfortable with the term fully.
Yeah, I know, but fully means entirely, which means 100%. The entirety of something is 100% of it.
Again, I'm going to stay on this turf. It says fully. I see no reason to adopt other terms.
I know, but I'm giving you the definition of the word fully. What do you think the word means?
Fully means fully.
What's the definition of full?
I'm going to stick with full.
The definition of full is an adjective containing or holding as much as possible, having no empty space, which means something that is entirely full is 100% full.
Great. So then just
not lacking anything. So it's the same thing. Full and 100% are identical terms.
What? Again, I'm going to stick with full.
Oh my God, dude, you're afraid you're going to get trapped in some kind of a ridiculous semantic trick.
Nope. I'm just going to stick with scripture. I mean, I'm not. Well, I'm not going to go outside.
We're going to work with the word fully, and it's not going to fix anything for you. You're going to have the same problem.
Sure.
So let me ask you a question. Again, God's nature change?
No.
No, obviously not. Does God's essential nature require that he's omniscient?
Of course.
Okay, was Jesus omniscient?
Yes.
Wrong. He says in Matthew 24:36 that he doesn't know the day nor the hour of his return. And he also, in Luke chapter 2, verse 40, it says that he had to grow in wisdom. So he couldn't be omniscient if he was acquiring knowledge.
Well, so he grew in wisdom and stature, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't omniscient.
Omniscience requires that you would already know all things. You can't grow in wisdom if you know all things.
Again, there's a mystery. That's part of the mystery.
Ah, there we go.
It's not a mystery. It's a contradiction.
Yeah.
No, it's not a contradiction.
It is a contradiction. You can't say that unironically. It's a contradiction, and you know it, and I know it.
No.
Oh, please.
He grew in. He grew in wisdom and stature.
What does it mean to grow in wisdom? What does it mean to grow in wisdom?
What does it mean to grow in wisdom? Well, again, in Christ, all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Christ.
I'm not asking that. I said, what does it mean to grow in wisdom?
Doesn't mean that you're learning information that you didn't have before.
It does. Yeah.
It just means you're growing. It means
you're gaining experience and knowledge and judgment based on the actual definition.
Well,
wisdom is experience, knowledge, and judgment, something that you learn over time. That's why we call the elderly are considered wise, because they've got experience. They've gained knowledge. So Jesus gaining experience, knowledge, and judgment just means he has to learn things, which is why in Matthew 20, verse 24:36, he says that neither the Son nor the angels know the second coming, the time, the day, the hour, only the Father. So if he doesn't know that, he's also not omniscient.
He and the Father are one.
That's adorable. That doesn't mean anything about being identical, because in John 17, that same chapter, he prays that his disciples and all the Christians would be one as he is one with the Father. And obviously it doesn't mean that all Christians are going to be identical one person. So that's not a winning statement.
Yep. Well, no, I mean, again, I'm just going to stick to scripture. I'm not going to sit here and say that I can resolve all there's an apparent contradiction, but that doesn't mean that it is.
No, it's a for sure contradiction.
You were about to say you can't resolve all the contradictions. You can't pretend that you didn't just say that.
No.
Oh, please.
No. You can't resolve all the apparent. Okay.
Oh, you can't resolve them because they're real contradictions. That's why you can't resolve them. If they had resolutions, they wouldn't be contradictions, but you don't have. Here's an easy one. 1 John 4:12, no one has ever seen God at any time. Premise number 2, people saw Jesus. Conclusion, Jesus isn't God.
Okay. Really?
Really? What?
So
you just tried to get us trapped in some ridiculous dialogue tree that when we stepped outside the dialogue tree, you didn't know what to do. And now you're being faced with your contradictions. And all you say is, really? Like we're at fault for your lack of understanding or knowledge. Like we're at fault for the contradictions that exist in the Bible.
So God the Father and Jesus the Son, I mean, aren't those two different persons? I mean, didn't we already establish that?
That's why the Trinity fails, because there's 3 gods in the Trinity, not one.
There's 3 gods in the Trinity. Okay. Well,
correct us. Hey, if we're wrong on something, please set it straight.
Come on, there are 3 gods, really? Is that really where we are?
Yeah. Jesus is 100% God. The Holy Spirit's 100% God. The Father's 100% God. That's three gods. You can't be 300% of anything.
Right. But again, according to your worldview, the laws of logic were created by man.
And
trying
to get us back in that dialogue tree.
Yeah.
That failed dialogue
the
tree.
whole.
They're descriptive of reality. Do you think that contradictions actually exist? Like, if I said that I'm holding a square circle in my hand, do you think that that's true?
No. Do contradictions? Wait.
Why?
Do contradictions exist?
Why is it not possible for me to have a square circle in my hand?
Well, it depends. When you say, is it a square? Well, what is it? Is the first question. So you start with the law of identity. What is it?
With 4 sides and no rounds.
Okay.
So if I said it's a square circle, so a square circle is specifically defined, or a square is something specifically defined as 4 sides, no rounds. So what that means is that something can be a square, but it can't be a square and not a square. It just is what it is, which is why that I don't have a square circle in my hand, because I've defined a contradiction. And as far as we can tell, contradictions don't exist, which means when I find a contradiction in the Trinity, it's just as invalid as a square circle.
Right. But again, how do you account for those rules? Let's just call them rules or statements, or how do you account for them?
I already told you I account for them because we made them up.
All right.
The same way we made up the rules of English, same way we made up the rules of math. We made them up.
So wait a minute. You're saying English and logic are both sort of on the same plane in that way, in that they're both created?
They're languages.
Languages were created.
They're both languages used to describe things.
How about logic? Was logic also created?
I just said that 3 times. Now we're going in circles. You're getting lapped, my man. Okay. What's happening?
So
I do have one more contradiction for you. Maybe your God can do contradictions. Tell me if your God can do this. Because if your God can do contradictions, I'd be really curious to see if this is one he can do. Your God is all-knowing, right? I mean, obviously not Jesus, but the Father is all-knowing, right?
Of course.
Or can all-knowing beings change their mind?
You're speaking to anthropomorphisms.
Nope. I'm just asking you, can all-knowing beings change their mind?
It depends. It really depends. Not in the same way, not in the same relationship.
I mean, it's either yes or no. They either can or they can't.
From our perspective, from the human perspective, yeah.
I'm not asking about human perspectives.
Right. Well, the context matters. Because again, the whole point of the law of identity.
I'm asking you
non-contradiction.
In reality, the reality that we know to exist, can all-knowing beings change their mind? Is definitionally laid out for you, by the way. If your entity is all-knowing, it can't change its mind because it already knows what it's going to do, which means it can't change its mind about what it's going to do, because it means it didn't know what it was going to do. So again, it's just entailed in the definition of being all-knowing that it can't change his mind. So do we want to start there? Is God all-knowing, and can he change his mind?
Right. But again, in the terms of non-contradiction, it's the same way in the same relationship. Now, on his level,
I have no idea why you think this addresses the argument. So it's either yes or no. Can God change his mind?
It depends. It depends.
It depends?
That's yes. The answer is yes. If it depends, then that's yes.
No, it depends. It depends. It depends.
It depends on what?
Because from a human, it depends on the perspective. From a human perspective, yes, because the way that he relates to us is a condescending way. Does that make sense?
This is definitely a condescending conversation for sure. But I'm not asking about condescension. I'm asking about, in reality, does God possess the ability to objectively change its mind?
From God's perspective, no. But from our perspective, yes.
There we go. No, it's only one perspective. We're talking about objective reality, or at least what we know to be objective reality. We're not talking about perspective.
No, because that matters. Because that matters.
So God can't.
That's the whole point.
So God can't change his mind, which is weird because in the Bible he changes his mind a few different times, and he actually learns things. In Exodus 32:14, and I know you're about to say it's anthropomorphism, but it's okay. I'll teach you why that's not true as well. says the Lord changed his mind about the disaster that he planned to bring on his people. How does he change his mind if he can't change his mind?
Or here's another. What about in Genesis when he's wandering through the garden looking for Adam and or Eve, and they were hiding from him? How could he possibly hide from, or how could they possibly hide from him if he was all knowing? Just dead silence.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, it was a question. It had a question mark at the end.
Sure. So again, from a human perspective, like man reacts to God in a way, and then it's described in Scripture what's occurring. And so obviously,
so it's not true.
God is like, wait a minute, where are you?
So when the Bible says that God said a thing, did he actually say it?
When God says a thing, does he actually say it?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
My point is very clear. In Exodus 32, God says, "Leave me alone so that my wrath may burn hot against them," them being Israel, "and I will consume them. And of you, Moses, I will make a great nation." Now, he didn't do that. He said he was going to do it, but then he didn't do it, which means he changed his mind. How is that possible?
Well, again, he's a relational God. That's why. I mean, there are a lot of things that get... It's called mercy.
So he lied, or he changed? Well, if he had mercy, he either lied or changed his mind. Like if he knew he was going to do it, and then he didn't do it, then that just means he changed his mind. If he knew he wasn't going to do it, and then he said he was going to do it, that means he lied.
Right. But again,
wait, can God lie?
No, of course not. No. So what you're getting there?
Well, then did he change his mind or did he lie? Which is it?
God can change his mind because he's merciful, because he'll have mercy, right?
But Numbers 23:19 says he can't change his mind, and being all knowing means he can't change your mind. So does God not possess all knowledge?
It depends on the context. That's what I'm saying. It depends on the context.
It depends on the context if God has all knowledge.
No, the context.
Give me the context where he doesn't have all knowledge. I can give you a context where he doesn't have all knowledge. Genesis 22 and also Exodus 33. In Exodus 33, he doesn't know what he's going to do with the Israelites. He's mad at them. And he says, "Say to the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. If for a single moment I should go up among you, I would consume you. So now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do with you." In fact, it's a cohortative in the Hebrew. It literally says, "I will know," meaning I will know something in the future. I will know what to do with you. So it's really interesting, like the expressive word yada in Hebrew is used of God, that he doesn't actually know something. Maybe he's not all-knowing.
Yeah, again,
maybe he's just a chump.
Again, it really does depend on the perspective, because again, God relates to us in a perspective that's somewhat condescending to reveal himself to us.
Did he speak these words? God's literal words are, "I will know," or "I would like to know what to do with you." It's in cohortative form, so you can translate it either way.
Right. So again,
does he not know?
Right, I think we've already covered that. So again, your perspective is the laws of logic were created.
Does he know?
And that logic itself was created.
Does he know what he's going to do with them?
Yeah, of course. So the laws of logic,
so then he lied.
Logic itself.
As he says he doesn't know. He says, "Hey, go over there for a while so I don't consume you, and later I'll know what to do with you." He actually didn't mean that when he said that then, because he already knew what he was going to do with them.
So you don't want to talk about logic anymore?
So he just died. I mean, lied. God lied. I think we covered logic enough.
Okay.
Because you're just going to ask me for the 15th time, how do I justify logic? I'm going to give you the exact same answer I gave you before, and round we go.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for taking the call.
You're chickening out of the call, huh? Okay. Thanks for calling. It's kind of disappointing that the moment that we don't follow the dialogue tree precisely the way he expects us to, suddenly he doesn't want to talk anymore. That's sad.
Get back on my script. Get on my script.
That was ridiculous. And the script wasn't even particularly convincing. To my understanding, I think the bottom line is he's trying to get us to admit that the laws of logic exist outside of space and time or whatever. And if that's true, then God could also exist outside of space and time. But
yeah,
why is he smuggling God in there? Like, I don't understand how that relates to literally anything. It's just presuppositionalist garbage, right?
It is. And if the laws of logic have some sort of objective existence, it means it exists independent of God. Because if they were transcendental, then you couldn't say that God exists, right? Because he would have to follow the laws of logic. You'd have to say God exists, and he also doesn't not exist because he couldn't violate P and not P. But if that's true, that means God is now bound by the own logic that you're trying to make transcendental, because God can't exist and not exist at the same time. He can't be God and not God, right? So like trying to make the laws of logic transcendental actually diminishes God by making him subservient to the laws of logic.
It's absolutely fascinating to watch people struggle with the fact that the Trinity and God himself completely violate the laws of logic. That was a really interesting kind of way to approach his ridiculous nonsense. But anyway, if you're ready, we can take another call.
Yeah, let's have at it.
Awesome. All right, let's bring in Ben, him from Connecticut, atheist. Justin asked for an update. What do you got for us, Ben?
Excuse me. Oh, great news. I wanted to let Justin know his advice a couple of months ago to me turned out to be a real gem. And I was so happy. He may remember I spoke with him a couple of times about my brother-in-law trying to force me into religion.
And he said he wasn't going to bring it up again, right? He's going to call a truce?
Yeah, and guess what? He called me and said, hey, could you come out and see me? I go, yeah, sure, dude. And he said, can you make sure no one knows that we're meeting? I was like, well, I'm thinking that's kind of cryptic, but sure, if you insist. So I met him, and he admitted that he could not debunk my arguments that I got mostly from you guys, and I appreciate it. And he basically said he considered himself an agnostic now. I was like, great.
That's positive. That's
but
movement.
You still believe it? Yeah, but now you still believe in God, though, right? And he had to admit, he goes, yes, I do. I said, well, why? And he goes, well, I guess faith. And right at that moment, I knew I had him.
Yeah.
I said, I used the Matt Dillahunty quote, is there anything you couldn't justify on faith? Like, could you believe that men are better than women? And he thought about it for quite a while. And he finally came back and said, no, I guess not. And I go, welcome, my brother. You're an atheist. I guarantee the water's fine. Everything's good. Give it a little time. Adjust to it. And you'll be a lot happier. And he said, okay, you win, but promise me you won't tell anyone. And I said, well, I'm not going to make that promise. I promise I will not tell anyone in the family, but I am going to tell the person that put me on this track. You don't know him. He doesn't know your name. No one else will ever know. Deal? And he said, deal. So I just wanted to let you know you deconstructed someone secondhand. Congratulations.
Man, that's exciting. I love it when people make a positive decision to follow truth. I think truth is paramount in the world we live in. That's how we stay out of senseless wars, and we actually do real science and learn about the nature of our reality is by following the things that are true, not the things that are comfortable.
I absolutely agree.
And you know what else?
Great show tonight, by the way.
A lot of people know that their positions are not based on truth or logic or whatever, and just need that push. And once they finally move over, even just a little bit, you've got them. It's like, every MAGA extremist out there knows that there are contradictions and problems and issues, but we just listened to this last caller be confronted with contradictions and absolutely refuse to accept it. Right?
Absolutely.
And it
You're
sounds
100% correct.
Sounds like your brother. Is that who it was?
My brother-in-law.
Okay, brother-in-law. It sounds like he was probably in the exact same spot as that last caller and then moved over to a more reasonable position, right?
I agree 100%.
It's good news.
Yeah, he's such a good guy in so many ways, too. Generous, kind. But he had this blind spot that he had for all these years, and he was like pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And, I put up with it. But now he's come over to our side, and he's a lot happy. Well, he's not really happy about it yet, but he will be. And
we'll come around,
I'm sure as hell a lot happier.
That's fantastic news.
Sorry?
We're certainly happy to hear it for you.
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure,
Since I started listening, I'm sorry.
Nothing. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
There's a lag.
Oh, no problem. I was just going to say, since I started listening to you guys a few years ago, I finally had some ammunition. Some strong ammunition rather than, Jack, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Now I always had rebuttals for everything he said.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Knowledge.
Coming prepared with the right answers is the best way to engage in oppositional dialogue. Because the minute you don't know something or you say something that's demonstrably false, the conversation is kind of lost. You really have to arm yourself with information and facts. And that's one of the reasons why I spend, as an atheist, not just because I have education, why I still continue to read and study the Bible so much. Because I can just open it up and say, here's a problem. How do you resolve it? And they don't have resolutions for them.
100% true. I can't argue with that. Oh, I did.
Anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, one last question for Justin. How do I get a hold of your cheat sheet?
So the cheat sheet is available to all of the members of my YouTube and my Patreon. It's a living document. I update it basically every week, maybe multiple times a week with new information. And so it's a kind of a subscription-based cheat sheet. It's full of every talking point basically you've ever heard me repeat on the air. I've probably documented it somewhere, plus some on my cheat sheet. I've got all kinds of really cool stuff on that thing.
No, I'm aware of that. Excuse me. I have to ask, unfortunately, because I'm on a very strict income because I'm retired, and so is my wife.
I understand.
And I live in Connecticut, and it's very expensive. And of course, Trump.
If you shoot me an email, I'll shoot you a free link.
Oh, cool. What's your email address?
You'll find it on my YouTube profile, but it's public. It's Justin@deconstructionzone.net.
Oh, very good. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Sure thing, friend. I got you.
You guys are the best. Great callers tonight, though, man. You chopped them up so bad. I was laughing my ass off on that last guy.
He was funny.
I just couldn't believe it. I was like, come on, man. They killed every argument you had, and now you're cornered, and you just can't say, I'm wrong. You can't do it.
Right. Yeah. That's the power of nuh-uh.
I'm going to use that one. It's pretty good. Oh, well, thanks again. You guys have a great night and great show. And Owen, I have been following you a little bit lately, not as much, but I've been catching you on different shows. Do you have a channel yourself?
Yeah, I have Owen Morgan is my channel, 400,000 subscribers. And then I have
Owen's been at it for a while.
I've been at it for 10 years.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I also have Owen's Fireside Chat. Owen's Fireside Chat is about politics primarily, and just Owen Morgan is about religion. And then Owen Unfiltered, I play video games and talk about stupid stuff. So yeah, there you go.
Well, that pretty much covers everything I like.
Right? Perfect.
I like politics, and I like playing video games.
I talked about covenant marriage in a recent video, and how insidious it is. It's pretty bad. But yeah, I also wrote a couple of books. One about whether Hitler was an atheist. That's pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, I heard that earlier, and I wrote it down. I was going to check it out.
All right, awesome.
What's your opinion? Was he an atheist?
No, he was not an atheist.
Give up the end.
He was a Christian, and I say it in the first chapter because I don't like burying the lead. But he was a Christian that held Christian beliefs and did things for Christian reasons. But he also cynically used the church to his advantage in similar ways to how we see Trump use the church or whatever, other institutions and people. So, yeah.
No, I'm aware of all those facts.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you had some other information to point out that he was an atheist.
Yes. You mean information to prove that he was not an atheist? Is that what you mean?
No, that he was an atheist.
He wasn't an atheist. There are a lot of claims going around by Christian nationalists, and they have been for like decades, and they're just completely fabricated out of the ether, just made up quotes from primarily a document called Table Talk that has a lot of problems. It was dictated by some people and then edited by an anti-church nutcase. And that's where we get a lot of anti-religion quotes from Hitler that were completely made up out of thin air. So, no, he wasn't an atheist. Yeah.
No, I didn't think he was, but...
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So
yeah, it's super interesting. And I actually, in the book, I actually go through the history of the church and in Germany and how they, how Hitler used them and the things that they did to stay in his good graces and stuff. And Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholicism, I go through the whole thing. So, yeah.
Wow, cool. Yeah, I definitely will pick it up.
Awesome.
I have just enough spare change in my budget after paying the freaking heating bill this month.
Yeah, I understand.
To have a few dollars.
Okay.
Where's it available?
Amazon and Audible. Yep, Amazon and Audible.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you next time then, right?
All right, you betcha. Thanks again, Justin. Yep. You really did me a solid.
I'm happy to hear it, friend. Let me know if you need anything.
You got it.
Cheers,
awesome.
Buddy.
All right, that was nice. I'm glad to hear that we're doing some good, right? It's always good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. Also, just for the record, I made this website called firesidewatch.com where you can watch videos with people and you can both play and pause. It's not ad supported. It's not even a subscription model. It's just really cool and I'm proud of it. And that's all. It's free to use. I figured I'd mention it. Anyway. All right, cool. Let's take the next caller. If you're down, we can bring in Chidumbe. I'm sorry, Chidumebi. He, him, Pennsylvania. Can you hear me?
Chidumebi.
Chidumebi. Got it.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
All right. Hi. Yes, mainly since you two are quite scholarly, I wanted your thoughts about how much of Yahweh is original versus how much is derived from Baal, especially Baal, Hadad, and El. Because when reading a lot of the Greek text and looking at, for example, Mark S. Smith's The Origins Israel's Polytheistic Background, a lot of Yahweh or Yahweh seems very Baal-like, even in the Asherah connections. So I was just wondering how much of it of Yahweh is original, and how much is derived, because it seems as you go through the Bible, Yahweh takes on aspects from the gods of each culture the Proto-Israelites seem to interact with.
Do you have information on this, Justin?
So as for like a percentage, I don't know if that's possible yet. The data that we have is mixed, and my favorite hypothesis is the Midianite hypothesis. This tries to stay a little bit true to like some of the elements of the Hebrew Bible without throwing it completely out. So the Midianite hypothesis is kind of like this. The God Yahweh probably, as far as we can tell from archaeology, developed roughly in the region of Midian and or southern Moab, so southeast of the Dead Sea. And he seemed to be associated with copper smelting, fire, and maybe volcanoes, according to the imagery that's kind of drawn up. So the general hypothesis, and this is kind of what Mark Smith would be on about, is that it seems like the people who believed in this God eventually became the Yahwists, and they took hold in the Judean foothills eventually after like the Bronze Age collapse in 1170, because they would have been like a minor faction, and maybe they even molded a little bit with some Hebrews that left Egypt and settled in the land of Midian briefly, and that's where they adopted this God Yahweh. They learned about it from the Midianites, and this also explains a couple other interesting parts of the Hebrew Bible that we can save for later. But this general idea is that the Yahwistic God had its own development in the land of Canaan, but whether or not it was in fact a part of the Canaanite pantheon is yet to be entirely discovered, because some of the texts that seem to conflate this God with parts of the pantheon come later, right? So we've got like the Kuntalet Ajrud pottery, you've got the temple at Arad and a few other sites that seem to be Yahwistic in nature, but it also talks about like Yahweh and his Asherah, or they'll have them like painted as a bull next to a young calf. The calf would be like the sun, right? So it's not entirely clear from what we know if Yahweh was initially part of the Canaanite pantheon, but by the time Deuteronomy is written, it seems like that might have been the case. Like Deuteronomy 32:8 essentially gives this narrative of how Yahweh was apportioned, El the Most High, apportioned the nations according to the 70 sons. And if you read the Ugaritic literature, there are 70 sons of El and Asherah. And each nation gets divided into each one of these gods, and they all have to manage the nations. We see this repeated in Sirach 17:17. We see it in Psalm 82. We see it in Psalm 74, if I remember correctly. This idea, anyways, of this like archaic God that is doing things that are very reminiscent of the Ugaritic literature, like smiting the heads of the Leviathan, different things like that. So we don't know if that God was adopted into the Canaanite pantheon later, or if that God originated as part of the Canaanite pantheon. That's the hard part that we don't know. What we do know is that the God Yahweh at some point got conflated with El. And this is what Mark Smith and others are going to be saying, is that they were initially two different gods, El or maybe Elyon or even El Shaddai. And Theodore Lewis talks about this as well in his writings, and Zaini Zevet touches on it, this idea that eventually these two gods got conflated. I think some of the best evidence of this is what you said. While we find these texts that used to talk about Baal in the Canaanite literature, it's almost like they just crossed out the name Baal and put Yahweh in there. And then we've got other texts like Exodus 6 verses 2 and 3, where he just flatly says to Moses that your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, knew me as El Shaddai, but they didn't know me by my name Yahweh. But that's, okay, that sounds to me like a cover-up. Like you're saying, hey, the reason why now my name is Yahweh, the God that all you people are worshiping, is because I just didn't tell them my name back then. They thought my name was El, but it's actually Yahweh. Well, what we know archaeologically is that the god El is just older. From the archaeological record, it looks like the Canaanites were the original Israelites. They worshipped this god El. He's well attested to in the Ugaritic literature. And then later, when the Assyrians swooped down and wiped out northern Israel, who was left standing? It was the Judeans and the Benjamites, the Yahwists. And so they took that literature, because about 1 million or 2 million people came down from the north and settled in Judea for safety. So now these two people groups are essentially merging. This idea of a Davidic united monarchy doesn't really seem to be all that well attested in the archaeological record. But the Assyrian conquest, forcing northern Israelites down into Judea, that is well attested in the archaeological record. So the general idea is we've got these two gods, the God of Israel and the God of Judah. How do we smush them together? Because now we've got all these people, different gods, living in the same territory down in Judah. Theoretically, we're all supposed to get along. We might have the same background. So they have to conflate their different god characters, which is why you see all these texts that will talk about El, no mention of Yahweh anywhere. And then you've got these running narratives where it's just Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. But that's because these were narratives stitched together by later Judean scribes to try to mix their two heritages into one united heritage so that they can have a united front against what would eventually be the Babylonian invasion. So I say all that to say this. We don't know exactly what the relationship between Yahweh and the Ugaritic pantheon is. We know there is a relationship, and we know for sure that there were parts of Canaanite literature, even like Canaanite literature that made it into Israelite literature, that was kind of usurped by the Judeans, and they more or less put Yahweh's name in it. That's a long answer. I hope that helps, though.
Yes, yes, that helps a lot. That actually clarifies. And if you would permit me, may I ask one more scholarly question, if you permit me?
Yeah.
Do you think that the transition to monotheism from polytheism was influenced by the ancient Israelites' contact with the Persian Empire, specifically with Zoroastrianism, especially during the conquests by, was it Darius or Cyrus?
Cyrus was the Persian king that conquered what was left of the Chaldeans.
Yes. So I was wondering if
maybe
a lot of the monotheism got influenced due to contact with Zoroastrianism.
There's definitely some Zoroastrian adoption. That's where they got this malevolent entity that the New Testament refers to as Satan. That doesn't seem to actually exist in the Hebrew Bible prior to the Persian period. He's more like a henchman of Yahweh at best. But anyways, the idea of monotheism seems to not just strictly been Judean. There was this really interesting movement where these nations had like gods of the fathers way back in the nomadic tribal period. And then as these giant cities arose, they became gods of cities, right? And then as the cities grew into nations, the god became gods of nations. And this worked out for a long while. That nation had a god, our nation had a god, so on and so forth. There's other gods, but we have patron gods, like special gods for this particular city. The reason why, and this is not just in the Bible, but we see a movement towards like partial monotheism in other texts too. If you read the Assyrian literature, like the Neo-Assyrian literature or the Neo-Babylonian literature, they seem to have this idea that now there's one high god that really deserves most of the worship, like Marduk. And there's other gods below Marduk, but Marduk's really the guy. That's the guy you got to worship. And so the reason why this seems to have happened is because all these nations now, for 1,000 years, with these national deities are clashing. People are going into exile. People are being carried away. And what do, right? When your nation gets devastated and the people group are scattered, either one of two things is true. Your God just lost and he's a chump. Or you still believe in your God and your God's actually not just a chump that's a regional deity. No. My God's going to fulfill his promises. Well, how can he fulfill his promises? Oh, because actually this was all planned, and my God is in charge of everything. Even this nation that came and wiped us out, he's in charge of that even. And so, like, even in the Neo-Assyrian literature, you'll find there are people like reasoning why somebody was defeated. Like when the Babylonians defeat the Neo-Assyrian Empire, they basically are saying, well, this was because the Neo-Assyrians weren't prioritizing the worship of Marduk. They were prioritizing the worship of Ashur. And Marduk, because he's God over everything, didn't like this. And so when we got these nationalities destroying other nationalities, it became a little more important to have a God that was over more than just your nation. That God needed to be over everything, because now we need to justify these wars and these exiles. And so we see a huge shift to monotheism during this period. And then once they meet Zoroastrianism, it just accelerates.
And interestingly, because the Greco-Romans went with syncretism. They just took a lot of the gods of the people they conquered instead of
the Egyptians did that.
They became more polytheistic instead of monotheistic, unlike these Levant Mesopotamian area peoples.
Well, the nations that tended to shift closer to monotheism were the ones that were migrating and winning and losing battles. For example, Egypt was never, when Egypt was entirely destroyed, maybe destroyed is not the right word, but taken over by the Greeks, there was a huge shift in their religion. But prior to that, they were pretty steady. They adopted other gods. They weren't too concerned about monotheism. So these huge shifts in religion seems to happen when these nationalities are basically fighting with each other, and a new power comes up. When a new power comes up, you have to rethink your divine realm. How did this divine realm allow our great nation to get into this situation? And there's different rationalizations for that.
Okay, so that's probably why, despite the variety of the Hindu gods, there's still Brahma as the overall focus.
Right, because you got it. They're just trying to figure out why. Why did this happen to us, right? And the Israelite excuse of why are all these nations beating us up? Oh, because God's mad. He's really mad. Well, why would God be mad? Oh, well, because we were worshiping other deities. Did you see this? They're making cakes to the Queen of Heaven over here, it says in Jeremiah. Why would God be so mad? Oh, because of these other gods. He doesn't want to share. Isaiah 46 doesn't want to share his glory with nobody else. And so they had to make up excuses why God would be so mad as to have their people groups destroyed. And for a lot of people, like the Babylonians and even the Assyrians, in fact, even partially the Persians, which is another story if you read the Cyrus Cylinder, a lot of it was because the god was mad. It wasn't receiving the worship that it was due. And I think the Hebrews just took that to the furthest extent and said, no. God's not only mad that we worshiped other deities, he's mad that we even think these other gods exist, which is definitely a late development, like intertestamental period development.
Fascinating. Are there books that you would recommend on this? That if you don't mind writing the title on your show so I can watch the recording and see the titles you recommend?
So there's a book on the nature of God and this transition of deity. I really like the one by Theodore Lewis. He wrote On the Origin and Character of God, I believe is the name of the book. It's really good. It does encompass the writings of Mark Smith. It does encompass the writings of Zini Zevit. It's a really comprehensive book. It's like 1,000 pages. It's an amazing write-up on the history of this biblical God. And it's going to cover a little bit of this transition from from polytheism or really henotheism into monotheism. You might also want to check out the edited work by Frank Moore Cross called Hebrew Myth. Or hold on, I got it right here. Hold on. Canaanite Myth and Hebrew Epic by Frank Moore Cross. This is actually a series of scholarly articles that Frank had put together, but they're themed. And it's really amazing. I definitely highly recommend this as like a really easy reading introduction to how they transitioned. But there's another author, I had the book somewhere, where he writes about the transition from nomadic life to sedentary life and how that affected the Yahwistic God, or the God of the Bible, right? Because as you shift from nomadism into settlements, your ideas of God change over time. You get a little bit of that in this book too, but that's neither here nor there. I can find the book for you sometime later if you email me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you for answering my questions. I'll let you off. I hope I gave you a bit of a break from more troublesome callers for a bit. But
well, we'll see about that. I don't know who's in queue.
All right. I hope the next caller is less headache inducing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Good call. Next we have hang on. We have Cortez from New Jersey, a theist caller. Yes. I mean theist as in believes in God. Not atheist, but atheist. My topic is, why do we hear about knowledge that we don't want to accept? Well, what do you got for us, Cortez?
When he was talking about God being in man's presence, the Trinity, I can understand it's to other people, and I'm the first person to say I don't have no credible evidence. I don't have no DNA, no science thing that I can give you. The only thing I can give you is my opinion and my life journey that I believe I have with God, but I can't give you any proof. Now, if you don't want to listen to it, that's okay. I'm not on this talk line to say that I'm trying to convert you. I'm just trying to give you the information that you're asking when it comes to people that believe in God. And for me,
well, here's the thing. I want to know. It sounds like you're saying that you believe it on faith, just because of, just because, right? Is that fair to say? Just you believe it because you feel like it's true?
Okay. Yes, I can agree with you.
In that case, you're not giving me a reason to believe it. I want to know why I should. And if there's no good reason why I should, then there's no good reason why you should either, right?
For me, I would disagree with you.
Okay, well, what good reason do you have?
For me, is that I believe in a soul. Just like Jesus had a soul, had a physical body, had messages of renewing the body, the flesh, and the spirit.
Can you tell me what a soul is?
A soul is the essence of your words and your behavior and the life that you live, your feelings, your presence with other people. And that's what I believe is a soul. I can't prove it to you, but that's my opinion.
My presence with other people?
Yes, your presence, the kind things you did, the memories that you have with other people. Your flesh is only here for a short time, but your soul will live forever.
So is the soul a physical thing? Like, is it something that exists physically in our body, or?
No.
What is it exactly? Like, is it our brain? Is it our thoughts?
It's nothing physical. I mean, it's tied to the physical because it represents you after you die. But for me, how I understand soul and how I understand the soul is something that's going to represent me in a physical and a non-physical form, that will have my eyes, that will have my lips, everything that's attached to my body as a non-physical presence.
So you think that the soul, what was the original reason you mentioned the soul? You think the soul is going to continue on, or what was it?
The soul lives forever. The flesh dies.
Okay, and how do we know that? Do we have any reason to, like, anything that you can give me, evidence of anything like that?
No, I can't give you evidence. The only thing I can give you is my opinion. And that's it. I'm just being honest.
I would like for you to bring me to where you are. If you don't have evidence for this, why do you accept it?
Because of the life that I lived and the hardships that I lived, and looking at the hardships and looking at the fact that, yeah, we have all this technology. You know, I live in America where it can be good or bad. And for me, when no one was there and no one could help me physically and help my spirit, God was always there with me.
Let me ask you this then. I've heard Muslims say something almost identical. How do I know if you're right or if a Muslim is right? Because they're mutually exclusive, right?
For me, honestly, in my opinion, people gotta make their bets. I'm not here to confuse or try to convince someone. The only thing that I was taught, and this is only my opinion and my experience of being a Christian and being raised Christian, is to spread my testimony. Now, if people want to follow God, that's fine. That's their choice. But I'm not going to be like dictating who should believe or who should not.
But doesn't the Bible say that you should spread the gospel? Doesn't it say that you should be ready to give an account for your beliefs and things like that?
Yes, but you can't. For me, the only testimony I can give is my experience and my emotions of going through life, my feelings of feeling hopelessness and feeling down and having depression and not feeling like the world was with me, and oftentimes growing up feeling like the world was against me. And the only thing that I had, my saving grace, is my music, writing music, and God. That's it.
Okay, well, I don't think I can convince you, and I don't think that you want to convince me either. So, yeah. Do you have any other questions for Cortez or?
I have one question, Cortez.
Sorry.
Personal experience. Do you think that personal experience is enough to validate that a religion is true, or do you think we should need more than that?
If you're talking about me, and my experience with God, yes. But if you're talking about as a person having a spiritual journey with religion, maybe it's different. I don't know. Every blessing that I got was meant for me. So I don't know what the blessing is going to be for the next person.
Right, but my point is, if I have a friend who actually believes in the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods, and she has told me that she's been visited by two of the Egyptian gods. If that's true, let's imagine that it's true. Would that not mean that there's a contradiction? Because the Egyptian gods can't exist while the Christian God is also existing.
For me, I wouldn't know how to answer that question personally. And I'm just being honest. I don't know. The only thing I know is my flesh and my journey with God. When it comes to the spiritual realm of being that close to God or being in that spiritual realm, I don't know how the rules or the logic or none of that, because I didn't even build a kingdom for my soul to be rest after my body is dead.
Okay, I'm sure I know what that means, but thanks for talking to us.
That's a lot. I appreciate the phone call.
You want me to explain it to you what I'm saying simply? For me, as a Christian, I believe after my body is dead, my spirit is still going to live on. So for me, I have to pick my
other religions believe it as well. That's my point.
That's fine, and that's they can. And for me, it's not about me competing with other religions or trying to dominate. For me, it's living my life.
It's not a competition.
To represent God.
So, Cortez, I'm not saying it's competition. What I'm saying is, if personal experience validates somebody's religion, then that means we've got a lot of contradictions to resolve because people have personal experiences of gods that would contradict the biblical God. So what that means is either all of these gods exist and we just have a weird contradiction at play, or none of these gods exist and personal experience is kind of a waste.
And for me, I'd rather bet on Jesus Christ. Now, I can be wrong. I'm not going to say that I can't be wrong. But for me, I'd rather bet on the Christ and the Lord that promised me salvation after my body is dead.
Right, but why would you want to bet on that thing? That's a horrific God to bet on. Like any God that would burn you alive for just being imperfect is not a God you would want to bet on. That sounds like an evil God.
To me, it's not evil.
Burning somebody alive is not evil?
Wicked. When it comes to wicked acts and people wanting justice for cruelty.
What do you mean by wicked acts?
Would choose.
In your worldview, Anne Frank is set on fire right now.
Anne Frank was an angel.
What wicked acts did she commit?
No, I'm not talking about Anne Frank. Because Anne Frank, in my eye, was an angel. But
was a what?
At the same time,
did she go to heaven or hell?
Was an angel? I don't know.
But did she go
not in charge of
because if she went to heaven, that means Jesus is useless. He died for nothing. If you can go to heaven without Jesus, then the whole Christian religion is pointless.
I don't know. I don't have that answer because I'm not in charge in judging souls. I'm not in charge of judging other people's sins or their holiness.
It sounds like you're not interested in engaging in the dialogue. No. It's going to be boring for all of us. I don't have any further questions. This cross-examination's over. I cede my time.
Awesome. Thank you, Cortez.
I don't know.
Okay.
So how's that bad?
Call in. You can call in again later on, and maybe we'll take another crack at it, okay?
All right. See.
All right, thanks.
I don't know.
It felt like he was just dead set on like not convincing us and not giving us any reasons whatsoever for what he believes. But I don't understand why he called a call-in show to debate that.
No idea.
That was it. All right. Well, we got one more caller here. We're gonna bring him in. We got Kara, she, they. I believe that's Indiana. What do you got? Wait, I'm sorry. I thought I brought it in, but for some reason the button is not working. 1 second. There we are. Are you with us, Kara? What do you got for us?
Hi. I was wondering. Sorry, brain.
You're fine. Don't sweat
it. I realized I wouldn't be available. I'd be working during the next time Justin had a Q&A. So I figured now would be a good time with the both of you to ask about solipsism.
Okay. What do you want to know about it?
Well, with a lot of my brain's not that great at figuring out words and whatnot. Like, it took me a while to realize what y'all meant by deconstruction or Pascal's wager and all that. But with solipsism, I'm kind of a little confused because, like, most of the time when people talk about it, the example of hard solipsism is you're a brain in a jar, or how do you know if you aren't a brain in a jar?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, so it goes like this. The only thing we know for certain is that we are. We don't know how we are, right? So, for example, the basic premise, I think, therefore am, just means that we have being. We just don't know how that being is. It could be very well that everything that's happening around us is a dream. And well, how could it be a dream? Well, it could very well that we're actually just a brain in a vat. We're part of a large collection of vats, and we're just a brain floating in fluid. And we're just, this whole thing is a dream. We don't have a good way to prove that it's not a dream. Owen could be a dream. Carl, you could be a dream. You could all be something inside of my dream right now. And so that's kind of the problem with solipsism, is we don't have a good demonstration or a good proof to demonstrate that what we think is the outside world is really the outside world. Just like when you're in a dream, you don't know that you're in a dream half the time. The people in that dream are very real to you. It's not till you wake up that you realize you were in the dream. So that's kind of what solipsism is about. Now, if you're talking to a believer and they bring up solipsism, I don't even entertain it, because if they want to argue the root of, well, you can't know anything, you can't even know if you're not a brain in a vat, that's true. It's true for Christians too. So it's just a useless conversation. The minute a theist brings up solipsism, they've undercut their own position while trying to undercut your own. It's just a useless endeavor.
I think the main reason I wanted to know more about it is this idea of why does it even matter? Because, sure, I can only confirm my brain being stimulated in the way it is to view the world as it is. I can't confirm yours or Owen's, but does it matter? Because there's a game I was playing where one of the classes you could be is a psionics that's based upon, in fact, you are the creator of the world. But instead of dying physically, you die an ego death. And the kind of thought, it gave me the kind of thought that, does it matter? Like, even if you and Owen are just parts of a stimuli in my brain, interacting with you positively sends me positive signals back. So would solipsism even matter in that way? Because it's still good to be good and do good, even if I am just a brain in a jar.
I don't think it's good or bad necessarily. I think it's a rhetorical technique usually when it comes up in these conversations. It's more about understanding where a person is and how they're arguing the position that they hold. In reality, we have some basic assumptions about the world around us that we all hold, just as a pretext to having a conversation in the first place. That we live in a shared reality, that the shared reality we're in is testable, and so on and so forth. So solipsism, hard solipsism, isn't really. I don't think it's not something that I sit around thinking about, because I don't. I don't lend it any credence. But yeah, some people do, I guess. Do you sit around worrying about it, or is it just kind of a rhetorical technique?
Yeah. Part of me will always want answers, like an all-knowing being to give me answers or something. And so the thought of solipsism is kind of scary, but I don't know, I guess I keep trying to reassure myself that even if I am just receiving stimuli, clearly positive actions are shaping whatever the stimuli is. So even if I am a brain, I think it feels good. Oh, sorry.
Usually you're fine. Usually when solipsism comes up outside of these thought experiments, it's usually more about usually there's something that goes along with it. do we live in the Matrix, for example, or something? There's usually something that kind of builds a story around what it could possibly be. But what you're referring to is the actual brain in a jar, I am the only thing that exists type of deal, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter even if I am a brain in a jar and the only thing that exists, or if it's one of the fancier, like, oh, are we in the Matrix? Because it does seem that our I can't think of the word, outputs to the stimuli that we put out seems to still have an effect on whatever the shared reality we have. So
yeah, morally, I would say the moral choice is to just be a good person, because the chances, taking this at its taking this at face value, the chances that we are just a brain in a jar or live in a shared reality, I guess, is kind of binary, right? Either we are in a jar or we're not. And it's, if we aren't in a jar, if we are in a shared reality, then being good people and moral costs us nothing. If we are in a shared reality and we're mean, it costs us a lot, right? So I think the moral choice would be to be a good person, because it costs nothing, basically, right?
Yeah, I think I was just looking for like a sort of reassurance that even if there's that slim chance of the stupid brain in the jar, like, it's still good to pick the good option in the dialogue.
Totally, yeah. There's good reason to be altruistic. I mean, if you really want to go down this road, you can read about why scientists think that twins have different consciousnesses. Like, why am I me and why are you you? There are people who have studied this and talked about it and tried to understand consciousness and what it is and why it exists and stuff. And you could check that out. But yeah, there's no real good answer to solipsism generally. You have to accept those basic assumptions or not.
Okay. Thank y'all. Y'all have a good night.
All right. Thanks.
Hey,
you
you
too.
too. Good to see you, Cara. Morgan, you bring up a good point that we don't get to talk about very often, but twins are really good proof that consciousness doesn't come from outside, because I'm a twin. I'm actually an identical twin. I can tell you that my twin brother and I, we think so alike. Often just sharing a glance will communicate everything we need to communicate, because we are so damn similar. But the reason why we're so damn similar is not because God just decided, oh, these two are going to have a shared conscious experience, because biology, our brains are determined to behave this way because we're identical twins. We split in the womb from the same genetic material.
That is so interesting. I didn't realize you were a twin. Yeah. Those studies are super ridiculously interesting, in my opinion. Like, just trying to understand the difference. And it comes up with AI as well. Like, is AI conscious? The answer is probably no. But understanding what consciousness is factors into it heavily, and when it arises and stuff. And when you study kind of the origin of humans, just the evolutionary path that we followed, and how consciousness emerged over the course of like 3 million years, which is ridiculously short, all things considered. Solipsism for me started to kind of melt away. I didn't really think about it that much because it's just like a natural process that I can understand, and that isn't like as mysterious as Christians want to make it out to be. It's incredible. Like, consciousness is incredible and valuable and rare in the universe, honestly, obviously. But it's just less mysterious when you understand what's happening in the brain and how it arises. But anyway, yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate that. And I saw all the super chats. I appreciate those too. I wish we could have gotten to them, but I was reading them all night. So know that your super chat was read by me. I saw it. Yeah. Anything you want to mention before we get out of here?
I don't think so, other than we've got LineCon coming up on Friday. Is that correct?
I believe
there's two.
So.
There's one Friday and one Saturday. What?
There you go.
Yeah, Friday and Saturday, friends. Come around for LineCon. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, check out our channels, of course, and everything. What's your channel?
You can find me at Deconstruction Zone for all my content. But if you just want to see me debate theist clowns, you can go to DZ Debates. I have a debates only channel. It's literally just debates. But if you want educational content and response videos and things like that, my main channel, Deconstruction Zone, is available. I had a really fun time, Owen. I had been watching your content for a long time before I got on the internet, awesome. So it was fun to actually get to interact with you.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for doing the show with me. I appreciate that.
I guess I'll clarify for anybody in the chat who doesn't know. We have basically, if you've ever been to an atheist convention, we do one of those online for our patrons, and it's $15 a month basically to get a ticket. We've got some great ones this weekend. Matt, Sarah, Leaving Faith, and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels are on Friday. They each give a 20-minute talk, and there's a 1-hour Q&A afterwards. And then Saturday we have Seth, Alyssa, and Dr. Ben giving talks, and again a Q&A afterwards. Will you guys read out the schedule for this week too?
Yes, I can do that. I actually have it up here, I believe. Looks like tomorrow we've got Skeptalk with Erica and Aaron Ra, I believe. Chewed Gum on the 14th with Taylor and Alyssa. The Hang Up on the 15th, which is Wednesday, with Matt. And then TACIS on the 16th with Ben and Luxander, I believe. And yeah, that's what we've got. So check that out. All right.
All right, friends. Have a great night.
Have a good one.
Patreon.com/call the line. Get in there and support the show. Thank you so much, everybody.